Hello, my friends, and thank you so much for coming to hang out with me on this late night edition, Wednesday, October 25th, or if you're Robbie, it's probably Thursday, right? In Australia today, right now. There is some breaking news in Maine. Prayers up for everyone in Maine. I did not have a chance to really deep dive into that. I know that it's happening. I know that it's very tragic, and I just wanted to mention that before we start tonight. Prayers out to everyone affected by this tragedy that is happening in Maine right now. That being said, if we could just refrain from breaking news in the chat, because it can be very distracting to everyone in the chat and also distracting to me because I can't cover that right now because I've been working all day on covering this for you guys. So it's very tragic and it's terrible. However, we are here tonight to talk about the Maya case. I know that so many of you have been watching the stream on a daily basis. If you have been watching it on Law and Crime or Court TV or even Tampa 13, and you have seen what is going on in the chats over there, you know that it has been pretty hateful, vitriolic, and toxic, and we don't tolerate that here. A lot of our chatters and people who are subscribers and who watch this channel on the regular know that this is a safe place for them to watch this stream. So many of my viewers are afflicted with CRPS, which is the chronic disease that is the subject of this lawsuit. So they understand chronic pain, they understand the difficulty in diagnosis. And because of that, I started a merch line. I added to my merch line. I made some Team Maya shirts. I'm going to show you what they look like. And I'm going to donate all of the proceeds from these shirts to research for CRPS on behalf of my viewers who suffer from this disease, which hopefully will be one of the good things to come out of this trial, is that it's going to raise awareness for this disease and for others that are so difficult to diagnose and for whom so many patients are told it's all in your head, you're making it up, you're not really in pain. And we see that, and it is bringing awareness to that. So here is some of the Team Maya merch that I just wanted to show you. We'll drop the link in the chat. The link is also below. It's also in my store page. You can get to the link. And all of these cute little shirts come in a million different colors, as you can see below. They're reasonably priced. I did not jack up the pricing. Because this is not for me to profit off of. This is, whatever proceeds come from this, we're donating to CRPS research. Somebody else had asked for some merch that says "Let her eat cake," which I thought was a great, hashtag Team Maya shirt. If anybody has any other ideas, drop them in the comments because it's hard for me to go through the chat after the stream. Or you can always email me at fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. Yes, somebody did mention that Recovery Addict has a great stream during the day, and he sits and watches all the testimony with you guys live, and he's amazing. I don't know when he sleeps. I really don't. But he also has a very safe place for people to watch the feed live. And he also has a viewer who's in the courtroom giving him daily updates, and she'll call him during the breaks. And she reports on what goes on in court. In fact, I was watching him the other day. He was in the stream the other night in the chat. So I went and I watched his show, and I also went into his chat, and it was fun because we have a lot of crossover viewers. But the woman, I forget her name, who sits in the courtroom every day, called in, and Maya and Kyle walked by, and she was like, "Hi, Maya. Hi, Kyle." So it was really kind of cool. It's kind of cool to have eyes in the courtroom. We had that when Duty Ron and when I covered the West trial with Duty Ron. He had become very close with members of the family of Classic and Sincere, and they called in to the show a number of times. And Jules, okay, her name is Jules. Thanks, you guys. Boots on the ground in the courtroom. Yeah. And this case is pending. It's being tried in Sarasota County, Florida. And the courthouse is in Venice. Somebody told me they went to the courthouse in downtown Sarasota and they were bummed out because they were at the wrong courthouse. So if you are going to try and get in, that is where you will find it. It doesn't look very crowded from what I've seen. The courtroom doesn't look very crowded, which I'm trying to somebody said they can't find the makeup. That's a different link. That's the Amazon link, because so many people are always asking me, what kind of makeup do you wear? What color is your lipstick? So I put together an Amazon list. This is on my store page and it's through Spreadshop. So it'll say Spreadshop and you'll just click on the link and go to that. So what I thought we would do tonight, since I know that Law and Lumber also covers this nightly, and also I don't know when he sleeps either. So he does a great job. So I don't want to really regurgitate all of the testimony that was in court. I don't know. I can't speak today. It's late, you guys. Not enough caffeine. Anybody else a single parent in here? That's exhausting. But Rob from Law and Lumber also recaps every single night. He's on trial, I heard, so he cannot recap tonight. So I'm here for you. I'm not going to recap everything from today. But what I thought we would do, because I told you in the beginning when I started covering this case, the first stream I did was a basic overview of the case. The second stream I did was opening statements. That is the stream. The opening statements show that I did is the one that is still demonetized on YouTube as being unfriendly to advertisers. So I don't know. They don't like the topic. They don't like the content. This is a trial that we're covering here with a lot of things that need to be talked about. And we're talking about them because we're not afraid to talk about them. We just have to be careful what we say in the chat. So if you could just use the letter K for the treatment that we are all talking about, instead of spelling out the actual word, hopefully we can get through this tonight without being called unfriendly to advertisers, because really there's nothing more friendly than this chat. It's like hanging out with a bunch of friends for the night. You're going to like it here. If you're new here, say hello in the chat. Everyone will be happy to talk to you and welcome you here. And it is really a very nice and kind community that we are building. I only started this channel in late June of this year, and we are growing quickly and, just attracting a lot of nice people. So here's the reminder for today. Be nice or leave. It's one of my mottos. The other one is I'm not a cupcake. Logo's up here. Sign is over here. You can't make everyone happy. You are not a cupcake. I have opinions. I'm going to share them. This is not a neutral channel. I come to you with 30 years experience of litigation. I'm an attorney in New York, practicing in New York State and federal courts. I am also a mother of 5 and a legal analyst and commentator now. And I'm also a working actor when the unions are not on strike. The SAG union is still on strike. The writers are not. And I kind of do it all. So you are going to get all of those opinions from me. My bias, not even bias, I'm going to say my opinions will change depending on the case. Sometimes I'm for the plaintiff. Sometimes I'm for the defendant. Sometimes I'm for the prosecution. Sometimes I'm for the defense. But what I always am is for the Constitution. So I'm a big believer in following the law, following the procedure, and uncovering the facts. And as I say, the jury is the finder of fact in this case. This case is going to be decided by a jury. The judge will instruct them on the law, and the jury will take the law into consideration when they are deciding liability in this case. This is an interesting case because they're trying liability and damages together, which is something that typically we do not do in New York. Typically, we will have 2 trials. The first trial will be only on liability or fault, and the jury will determine whose fault it is. And if they decide in favor for the plaintiff on any or some portion of fault, the case then moves on to a second trial on damages. And I find that a little easier to swallow because it's shorter. The issues are more streamlined because once you get into damages and all your economic experts and pain and suffering, it brings it makes the waters a lot muddier. And I think you can see that here because you've already seen Maya testify about damages, and Jack and Kyle and the economists and the expert witnesses who came in and talked about future care and how much it's going to cost and medical bills and how much they're going to cost. If the trial were bifurcated, none of that stuff would be talked about. It would only be about fault. But here we are in Florida with a jury that gets to ask questions, because that also doesn't happen in New York. And we've got this big mishigas of a case, and it is complex. And so I thought what I want to do is, because I said from the beginning of this case, this is going to be a battle of the experts. It's going to be a battle of the experts. And I still believe that. The jury will determine facts. They will determine whether or not certain things happened. There's a lot of conflicting testimony. Maya says that, for example, Maya says that Kathy Beatty put her on her lap and kissed her and stroked her hair. And Kathy Beatty says, no, I didn't. And we have no video evidence to show us otherwise. So the jury is going to determine whether or not that really happened. Who do they believe? They believe Maya, or do they believe Kathy Beatty? We'll see. But with regard to the experts, the jury also has to determine which experts they're going to believe. And there was some testimony today from a Dr. Anderson, who is the defense expert on hospital policy and procedures. And you will remember, if you have been watching this trial from the beginning, on October 11th, we heard from a Dr. Joseph Corcoran, who is the plaintiff's expert on the same topic, hospital policy and procedure. So what I want to do tonight is a little battle of the experts. We're going to go back and we're going to watch Dr. Corcoran's testimony, and then we're going to watch Dr. Anderson's testimony from today, and you are going to be the jury, and you are going to tell me who you believe and who you think makes a better witness. For those of you who will be on rewatch, thank you. It is late here in New York, but hey, a lot of you guys are in LA or Australia or wherever, so we're going to give it the old college try. A lot of you also are not familiar with most of the facts of this case. So what I would like to do first is take a look again at the verified complaint. This is the pleading that brought the action in this case. That's how you start a lawsuit, is you file a verified complaint. It sets forth all of your allegations against the defendants in this case, and it tells the judge, the court, the jury what you are going to prove, what your allegations are. So I thought we would go back to, this is the 8th amended complaint. I never had an 8th amended complaint. I've spoken to friends recently who I want to come on this show who are medical malpractice plaintiffs and defense attorneys. Nobody's ever had an 8th amended complaint. So this case has been going on since it happened in 2016. I think they filed a lawsuit maybe in 2017. It's been going on for a long time. But in order for us to just go back to the facts, I'm going to take you back to the background portion of the verified complaint. And we're going to go over some facts that you may not know, because I think there are still some things we still have not heard about in this trial yet. So if we go back to the original complaint, it is 90 pages long, this 8th amended verified complaint. Obviously, I cannot read 80 pages to you because you would get really tired of my voice at that point. But I want to just go over some of the factual allegations, because a lot of people are not aware that there were 2 calls made to the CA hotline, not just one. There were 2. So we're going to go back to see what the plaintiff is alleging, whether or not they've proven it, whether or not you think they're going to be able to prove it. And let's just go back and take a look. I'm going to start on paragraph 23. This is still called the background portion in the verified complaint. And it sets out a lot of background in the beginning. And this is following Maya's CRPS diagnosis. So many of you know that she was diagnosed with CRPS, which stands for chronic regional pain syndrome, right? Chronic regional pain syndrome. I'm getting confused. It was formerly known as RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Yeah, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Complex regional pain syndrome. Yes. Okay. And it is very difficult to diagnose disease. Maya, at the time of her diagnosis, was 9 or 10 years old. It is not that often seen in children, but it is seen in children, and it is the most painful disease known to medicine. It is often called the S disease, which stands for the unaliving disease, which is one of those 7 dirty words that we can't say on YouTube, because that's how painful it is. Many people in the chat who may be here tonight suffer from it. If you have questions, feel free, and they will answer them for you. They are very open about their condition. They will tell you how hard it is to diagnose, how painful it is, and how it is hard to find treatments that work. I had to redact this complaint and black out the K word because Maybe I showed something on another stream and that's why it was stricken. Who knows? But whatever. All right. Again, back to plaintiff's complaint. This is the allegations going back to paragraph 23. Following Maya's CRPS diagnosis, Dr. Kirkpatrick provided an initial series of K infusion treatments for Maya. The initial treatments administered by Dr. Kirkpatrick had some benefit, and upon the advice and coordination of Maya's CRPS specialists, including Dr. Kirkpatrick, Jack and Beata took Maya to a CRPS clinic in Mexico for a specialized K infusion therapy treatment, commonly known as a K coma, not available in the United States. The treatment was effective, but follow-up booster K treatments were necessary thereafter and were administered first by Dr. Kirkpatrick and then later by Dr. Hanna. 24. Due to these booster K infusion therapies, Maya's CRPS symptoms steadily improved in early 2016. During an admission at JHatch, and that is Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, I'm going to call it JHatch, it's just easier. During an admission at JHatch in March of 2016, and upon the request of Maya's specialists, doctors at JHatch evaluated Maya and determined a port was medically appropriate for assisting her CRPS infusions. Okay, so that was March. The admission that is the subject of this lawsuit is October of the same year. JHatch doctors then prescribed and performed a surgical procedure to place a semi-permanent plastic tube through Maya's skin and into her muscle, commonly known as a port, specifically for the purpose of facilitating the necessary K infusions. Oops, I didn't black that out. Bizarrely, given JHatch's role in facilitating Maya's K treatments, these infusions later served as defendant's rationale for taking Maya away from her family for over 3 months and accusing her mom of CA and of Maya being a psychiatric patient who made up all the pain she expressed. Following JHatch's surgical placement of this port, Maya continued her K infusions, IVIG therapies, hyperbaric oxygen therapies, and specialized physical therapies for 2 more months under the care of her treating specialists and primary care, including doctors at JHatch. In May of 2016, a JHatch pulmonologist sent a note to Maya's pediatrician, Dr. John Wassenauer, and noted the significant improvement in Maya's condition and pain levels after having undergone the above outlined therapies for CRPS. 26. Given her steady improvement facilitated by the K infusion treatments JHatch facilitated, the frequency of Maya's K infusions waned, over the summer of 2016. However, as often happens with CRPS patients, Maya would suffer flare-ups of her symptoms, as CRPS is a permanent, though periodic, disease. As documented by another one of Maya's treating CRPS specialists, Dr. Hanna, Maya experienced another flare-up in September of 2016. In October, paragraph 27, in October of 2016, after the frequency of her K infusion therapies increased, Maya began experiencing a recurrence of abdominal pain and vomiting. Upon the advice of Dr. Hanna, on the morning of October 7th, 2016, Jack Kowalski transported Maya to JHatch for treatment of these symptoms. Beata Kowalski later arrived at the hospital and explained Maya's condition as best she could to the ER staff unfamiliar with Maya's condition and CRPS. The Kowalskis related the appropriate dosages of pain medications for a child with CRPS, which were and are significantly greater than the typical dosages for children who do not suffer from CRPS, but which are supported by clear and documented clinical results for that condition. The JHatch pain team called Dr. Hanna, who confirmed the CRPS diagnosis and the recommended levels of pain medications, including K, the JHatch, that should be a period, including K. The JHatch ER and Pediatric Care Unit, PICU team, however, immediately ignored Dr. Hanna's recommendations despite their admitted lack of clinical or academic experience with CRPS. 28. During the course of their examination, certain JHatch personnel also indicated they wanted Maya to undergo medical procedures necessitating physical contact with the patient that would be painful for a CRPS patient, such as applying a blood pressure cuff, administering an EKG, and undergoing additional scans. While seemingly benign and innocuous to physicians unfamiliar with CRPS, such contact can and often does cause flare-ups of the condition. Maya's parents informed J. Hatch that Maya's CRPS required certain precautions in performing these tests and examinations to reduce the amount of discomfort and pain for their daughter. Nonetheless, J. Hatch insisted on performing the tests, and Maya's parents provided recommendation to ease Maya's pains during the test. 29. Upon information and belief, certain J. Hatch personnel, despite their unfamiliarity with treating CRPS, and despite Dr. Hannah's corroboration of Beata and Jack's relaying of the recommended CRPS treatments, became offended and defensive by the suggestions given by the mother, a registered IV nurse, and father, a retired Chicago firefighter. Almost immediately, defendants, and specifically Deborah Hansen, a social worker employed by J. Hatch, reported Beata to the DCF CA hotline. It's written out there, but I can't say it, claiming that Beata was interfering with Maya's treatment and there was a disagreement about dosages of K. 30. The DCF investigator immediately reached out to Maya's specialist and confirmed that Maya did have CRPS, and the mother's requesting of Dr. Kirkpatrick and Dr. Hannah's doses of K administration by infusion were indeed necessary and recommended for this child. DCF discovered that there were valid prescriptions for K on file, and there was no indication that the Kowalskis had deviated or even could deviate from the prescribed dosages. Thus, the hotline call was immediately screened out, i.e. closed that same day. J. Hatch was notified that this investigation had been closed and there was no legal basis to prevent a patient-requested discharge from J. Hatch. Just to recap for a second, all of that happened the day of admission, October 7th of 2016. The hotline call was screened out and closed. J. Hatch was notified that it was closed, and there was no legal basis to prevent a patient-requested discharge. They wanted to be discharged AMA against medical advice. We've seen a lot of testimony on that so far, and they were told no. Those are my words. Now we're going back to paragraph 31. The next day, October 8th, 2016, as Maya continued to suffer and frustrated by J. Hatch's lack of empathy and knowledge of CRPS, Maya's parents became increasingly uncomfortable with the care and treatment Maya was receiving at J. Hatch and advised J. Hatch that they wished to have Maya discharged so that she could be treated elsewhere by specialists with personnel familiar with treating CRPS. 32. Instead of complying with the family's wishes and in violation of its own internal policies and procedures, J. Hatch staff contacted hospital security and its risk management team, who jointly decided that any such discharge would be against medical advice. J. Hatch notified the Kowalskis that they would not be allowed to leave with Maya, and if they tried, J. Hatch's security team would stop them. J. Hatch then called Dr. Sally Smith and improperly granted Dr. Smith access to Maya's medical record in order to build a case of CA against the family. Outside of any open state investigation, J. Hatch and its physicians consulted with Dr. Smith regarding Maya's condition and recommended course of treatment. Paragraph 33, on October 9th of 2016, Maya's parents once again requested a transfer to Nemours Children's Hospital of Orlando, set up an appointment with Dr. Hannah, and notified J. Hatch that they wanted Maya to be discharged. J. Hatch denied the Kowalskis' request again and deflected the parents' concerns while hiding its true intentions from the Kowalski family, giving Dr. Smith time to invent a theory of CA. On October 9th, paragraph 34, on October 9th, 2016, acting on the advice from Dr. Smith, J. Hatch, and specifically Elaine Brown, a social worker employed by J. Hatch, called the DCF CA hotline a second time and reported inflated, unsubstantiated claims regarding Beata's alleged medical CA of her daughter, Maya. J. Hatch falsified its own internal medical records detailing what was purported to have been reported to DCF, as shown by a comparison of the actual DCF records, hotline reports outlining what allegations were relayed. In doing so, J. Hatch consulted with Dr. Smith, and upon her recommendations as its agent, reported the Kowalskis in bad faith and with reckless disregard to Maya and her family to keep her at J. Hatch and under their control. Notably, J. Hatch and Dr. Smith had and have a demonstrated history of conspiring together and taking similar action against other families in the past. 35. In this second call to the abuse hotline, J. Hatch ramped up the abuse allegations, this time making the following false claims. A. Mom had suspected mental issues. B. Mom was requesting Maya to be placed in a coma using pain medications. C. Mom got angry at Maya when she woke up and said she felt good and hungry. D. Mom was refusing Maya a donut when she got hungry. E. Mom was giving Maya unauthorized IV medications at home. F. Mom is believed to have mental issues. And G. Maya was not actually in pain. 36. These allegations were demonstrably and knowingly false. Dr. Blank, redacted per agreement, of J. Hatch had prescribed hydrocortisone to be used in conjunction with Maya's K infusions as early as January 2016. J. Hatch had installed Maya's port and then used the K infusions and administration of IV medications at home as a basis for their CA allegations. 37. The donut incident was an outright lie, as Beata was not even in the hospital when Maya awoke and was not there for the supposed request for a donut. Jack was present. Furthermore, 3 J. Hatch physicians, apparently not aware of the change in J. Hatch policy, had placed notes describing Maya's pain in the previous admission records. The claim that Beata was believed to have mental issues was made without a psychological evaluation of Beata, without a consultation with her husband Jack to determine if this was an accurate assessment, and without a review of Beata's medical history or J. Hatch's own internal notes concerning J. Hatch's past positive interactions with Beata. The basis for the second call was clearly an intentional web of outright lies, omissions, and exaggerations. 38. Following J. Hatch's second report of CA, Jack and Beata, unaware of the charges, continued to request Maya's discharge, but J. Hatch justified their unreasonable denial of the parents' requests in part on the alleged severe effects of K withdrawal. On October 11th, 2016, a J. Hatch nurse noted that they were weaning Maya off of K, and that if Maya was not properly weaned, Maya could suffer from seizures, heart attacks, and even death. These unsupported concerns have had and have zero basis in medical fact and are not supported in the literature. Not only does K have no physical withdrawal symptoms, as it is not an opioid and does not act on the opioid receptors in the brain. By this point, Maya's last infusion was already 4 days past. The risk of cardiac arrest was simply invented by J. Hatch. 39. On that same day, October 11th, Dr. Smith called Dr. Kirkpatrick about Maya. He confirmed that Maya had generalized CRPS and that the concerns made by the doctors reporting potential CA, that Maya would recoil from the doctor's touch but was fine if sheets touched her, was a consistent reaction for that disorder. He also specifically cautioned Dr. Smith against accusing the family of criminal conduct like Munchausen by proxy. Dr. Smith intentionally hid this information and ignored it as advice, unbothered by her or J. Hatch's lack of CRPS expertise. 40. Making no mention of Dr. Hannah's conversation with J. Hatch that the K treatments were appropriate, nor her conversations with Dr. Kirkpatrick, Dr. Smith cobbled together a preliminary report in collaboration with J. Hatch, opining that Maya did not meet the diagnostic criteria for CRPS and that she was likely victim of pediatric condition falsification syndrome. That's also an MB. That's the new name for MBP. J. Hatch fed these allegations, and the preliminary report served as the primary basis for Maya's placement into protective custody on the afternoon of October 13th, 2016. A dependency shelter order was entered on October 14th of 2016, which designated J. Hatch as the shelter location for Maya. In the week leading up to the entry of this order, defendants imprisoned Maya at J Hatch with no legal justification. Throughout the underlying DCF proceedings that ensued, J Hatch failed to inform the court or DCF investigators that in the year prior to Maya's commitment, J Hatch itself had repeatedly worked with Maya's CRPS specialists, independently confirmed her CRPS diagnosis, surgically installed a port to facilitate Maya's K infusions, and repeatedly provided prescriptions to aid in the fulfillment of her K and other CRPS treatments. After J Hatch and his agent, Dr. Smith, intentionally withheld the diagnosis and course of treatment by Drs. Hannah, Wassenauer, and Kirkpatrick, despite being under oath to tell the whole truth, J Hatch continued to withhold information from the dependency court even after it abandoned the diagnosis of MBP and diagnosed Maya with competing disorders, factitious disorder and conversion disorder, for which there is no need to isolate the child from her friends and family. J Hatch and its agent, Dr. Smith, further withheld exonerating evidence of Maya's objective condition in the form of covert video surveillance taken within 3 weeks of her October admission, never presenting the video footage to the dependency court since it undermined their position and so-called diagnoses. Finally, J Hatch intentionally covered up and withheld photographic evidence of Maya's prominent physical conditions, including her feet turned in, dystonia, and her distinctive CRPS lesions. 41. Upon learning that her child was to be taken from the family during the first court hearing on the matter, Beata suffered intense emotional grief and shock, physically manifesting in a panic attack with extremely elevated heart rate, dizziness, tremors, and finally fainted in the courtroom, striking her head on a wooden table and then the floor loud enough to be heard on audio recordings of the proceedings. Upon information and belief, these impacts caused a mild concussion. She was transferred by ambulance to a local ER for evaluation. Beata was diagnosed with acute stress and grief reaction in the face of repeatedly being accused of CA and having her daughter taken away. Defendants, because they were standing in the courtroom at the time, were on notice of her condition. This notice is also reflected in the risk management notes of J Hatch and in records received by Dr. Smith. During Maya's forced sheltering at J Hatch, this is paragraph 42, she, her brother Kyle, her mother, Beata, and Jack, her father, suffered immensely at the hands of J Hatch and its staff. The actions of J Hatch, Dr. Smith, and Ms. Beatty were grotesque, as Maya was deprived of her rights, imprisoned by J Hatch, battered and SA'd by J Hatch social worker Ms. Beatty, and isolated from her friends and family. J Hatch and Ms. Beatty routinely interfered with Maya's visitation rights, turning away family and friends, interrupting court-ordered visits and calls, and spying on or eavesdropping Maya's conversations with her family and attorneys. Unsurprisingly, Maya's mental health and physical condition deteriorated significantly over the course of the 3 months she was sheltered at J Hatch. Even though J Hatch was charged with looking out for the best interests of Maya while in their care, J Hatch and its counsel repeatedly endeavored to keep Maya separated from her family and friends. This goes on to explain what happened, that Beata became depressed. She voiced this depression and fatigue to J Hatch and Dr. Smith, which to any reasonably trained physician indicated a possibility of unaliving or other self-harm. Despite specific and documented warning signs, J Hatch and Dr. Smith continued a campaign of degradation and threats towards the Kowalskis and specifically Beata. Several doctors at J Hatch knew that J Hatch's concerted efforts to demean and intimidate Beata were driving her towards unaliving, going so far as to predict her unaliving. We saw text messages about that. 44. Maya was released to her grieving father's custody on January 13th of 2017, a week after her mother's death, and unbelievably over J Hatch's objections. I'm going to stop there, but I just wanted to give you a quick, not so quick, but a broad overview of what the plaintiffs are alleging. And whether you think that they have proved some of that, I think that they definitely have proved at least some of that so far. Thank you, Robbie, for your super chat. Hit the like, everybody, hit the like. All right, while we are looking at some of this testimony, I'm going to go back to the chat and check for questions Congratulations, Villeray, for becoming a new member. Yay, we're so happy to have you. It's going to be really fun. Okay, so the first witness we are going to take a look at is we're going to do them in the order in which they appeared in court. So the first one is going to be the plaintiff's expert on hospital policies and procedure. And that is going to be Dr. Joseph Corcoran. He testified on October 11th. So let's take a look about what he said. Some of you may have seen it already. And if you did see it, well, then we get to watch it again together. I'm going to just speed this up a little bit because he gives a lot of his pedigree in the beginning, which is basically his qualifications. And then I will, if it's too fast, let me know. I will slow it down if we deem necessary. I'm only going to go on 1.5, so it shouldn't be too fast for you. But let's see how we go. All right. Dr. Corcoran, he already testified on October 11th. This is plaintiff's expert. He's being called in by the plaintiff. He's a non-party expert witness.
Next witness, please. May it please the court, I'd like to call Dr. Joseph Corcoran. Record.
Yes, sir. I'm Joseph Corcoran,
MD,
DO.
DO. And where do you live?
I live in Tampa, Florida.
And have I asked you here as an expert in hospital administration to advise the jury on your review of the policies and procedures at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital during the relevant period?
Yes, you have.
I'd like you to give the jury the background, a little bit of your background training and experience for offering opinions here today, particularly your well, why don't I let you start?
Good afternoon. So I'm Joe Corcoran. I'm an OBGYN by background. After finishing my residency in Philadelphia, I practiced in Sarasota for about 12 plus years, from 1991 to 2003. I am board certified by the American College of OBGYN. I spent my first 3+ years working for a large practice. In March of 1995, I started my own practice with the idea of keeping it small and boutique-y. That didn't last very long, and the practice actually grew fairly quickly. By the end of my term with the practice, I believe that we had 3 physicians.
I got a request to slow it down just a little, so I think I will go to 1.25. It is a little fast, but he's a good witness. I like him. I like the way he presents. That's my opinion. You don't have to believe it, but I like him.
3 nurse midwives and 4 nurse practitioners serving a variety of offices, one of which was here in Venice. The main one was in Sarasota near Doctors Hospital. In 2003, shortly after I became a dad, I had what should have been routine back surgery. There were complications after the back surgery that ended my clinical career. I was unable to continue to stand, bend, lift, twist. Obstetrics is a fairly physically demanding specialty, even though the babies are fairly small. So it took about 2 years for me to get better. And I did that recuperation at home in Sarasota. In 2006 or 7, I started a business education master's program at University of Florida in the Warrington College of Business. I graduated with a Master's of Science in Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Shortly after graduation, I was recruited to a healthcare think tank in Washington, D.C., known as the Advisory Board. It's been around since the early 70s and is now part of Optum Healthcare. I joined in November of 2008. My first day on the job was the day before we elected Barack Obama as president. So it was really kind of neat to have a front row seat to the development of the Affordable Care Act. I had nothing to do with the legislation. We actually helped hospitals and large medical groups know how to change in this new paradigm. I was with the advisory board through the beginning of 2013. At the end of 2012, just prior to the election between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, I was asked to deliver an address at the Longboat Key Club in Sarasota, talking about what would a second term of Obama versus a first term of Romney look like for healthcare. There were some executives from HCA in the audience. A conversation started that evening that ultimately led to them offering me the opportunity to work with HCA Healthcare. HCA Healthcare is a for-profit hospital company. It currently has about 108.
I think he got a little too much into politics there, and he may have turned off some of the jurors. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I don't think bringing politics in it was necessarily a good decision, just because politics can alienate half the people you're talking to. That's why we shouldn't talk about politics. We don't talk about politics in the chat. This is not a political channel. It just alienates half your audience right away.
80 hospitals, I believe, in 20 or 22 states. So I was offered the opportunity to become the chief medical officer of Brandon Regional Hospital in suburban Tampa. It's about a 350 to 400 bed hospital at the time. I was in that role from 2013 until 2018.
Did Brandon, I'm sorry to interrupt, did
Yes, sir.
Brandon have pediatrics as well?
Brandon always had a pediatric capability, but during my tenure, we actually developed what we referred to as a hospital within the hospital, so that we had a dedicated pediatric emergency department that had a separate entrance from the adult emergency department, and we had a dedicated floor for pediatric patients, including a pediatric ICU, and of course, being a heavy OB hospital, we always had a neonatal unit as well for newborns.
Please continue from there.
Thank you. So in the fourth quarter of 2018, based on some progress that I had a hand in at Brandon Regional, I was given the opportunity to assume a larger role within the company. And for better or for worse, that included a move out west. I became the division chief medical officer for the Far West Division, which has responsibility for about 35 cares of site total, but 5 acute care hospitals in the state of California, 3 acute care hospitals in Las Vegas, Nevada, including Sunrise Hospital, which is about 800 beds today. If I'm not mistaken, the Sunrise Children's Hospital, which again has a separate entrance and a separate emergency department, accounts for 206 of those beds. I was in that role for about 3 years, including when the nation learned about COVID. One of our hospitals in the Silicon Valley actually had patient number 2 in the whole country. So we were kind of winging it. We were figuring it out. And a lot of what we did in managing the early cases in California and some in Nevada actually set the foundation for how the rest of the company managed COVID across as it spread from the West Coast. I was in that role for about 3 years. I left the role because, quite simply, it came down to a job that I loved and a family that I adored. My wife and my 2 kids were never able to move out west, so I was commuting about 2,000 miles, 5 hours by air, and my kids are my world, so that became unsustainable. So at the end of 2021, I moved back east. And in the early part of 2022, I accepted an opportunity to step away from full-time service to HCA Healthcare and take on the opportunity to serve interim roles. So they would drop me in basically as a consultant, and I would work, 3 months at a time, engaged at a specific hospital, trying to address more specific problems.
So did Sunrise Hospital, can you elaborate a little more on what your job duties were there at HCA in the Western Division? And particularly, Jerry would like to know about Sunrise Hospital and the other pediatric units that you were involved in. Yeah,
so Sunrise Hospital is a very large safety net hospital. As I said, it's over 800 beds today. The night of the 1 October shooting, you may remember where there was a sniper at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. The night of that shooting, 100 patients were taken to the county hospital, the old Clark County General, which ultimately became University Medical Center. They accepted 100 trauma patients and then shut off and went on divert. Our hospital emergency room took over 350 patients in that night. We always felt that we had to be there for the community. So it was very much a safety net hospital. It was, really kind of, it was off the strip. It was not the glamorous part of Las Vegas. The Children's Hospital, and Mr. Anderson, I want to make it clear, as the division chief medical officer, I had a facility chief medical officer at Sunrise, who really was more responsible for the day-to-day operations.
Did he report to you or she?
He did. Yes, sir.
Report to you?
Yes, sir.
So you were over the administrator there in terms of problem solving and operational decisions?
So my focus was always on clinical quality and patient safety. That really is job one for a chief medical officer. So I want to make clear, I was not over the entire leadership. There was a CEO who really ran responsibility for the hospital. My job was to support, lead, direct the chief medical officer at the facility, who also had the responsibility for clinical care and quality. Safety, I'm sorry.
And you said you're married. How long have you lived in Sarasota, setting aside your trip out west?
So I moved to Sarasota in the summer of 1991 after finishing my residency. I was a little bit of a slow learner. I didn't get to meet my wife until 1998. So I was single for a long time. And I lived on Siesta Key for most of that time. I met Patty in 1998. We got engaged in 1999. We got married in 2000. So we've been married a little bit over 23 years now.
And is she involved in business as well?
Yes, sir, she is. When I met her, she was helping her mom and dad run El Greco Cafe, which was a Greek restaurant down on Main Street in Orange in downtown Sarasota. And it's funny, I actually remember sitting at the intersection waiting for the light to change and saw the logo that said, where it was Greek cuisine, where
Okay, I'd be objecting all over to this because, like, really, who cares? But what he's trying to get across, I think, to the jury is, number one, he understands chronic pain. He had back surgery. He lost his career. He couldn't be a practicing OBGYN after his back surgery and his failed back surgery. So he understands a chronic pain and a failed surgery, and he must have had debilitating back pain to get back surgery in the first place. Number two, he's a local. He keeps talking about Sarasota and how he met his wife there and, how he's been there for a long time. He loves it. And number three, he's a family guy. He left his job to come back to his family. It means everything to him. He's talking about how he's met his wife. It could be endearing to the jury. It may turn them off. Let me know what you think. But he is here to give his qualifications because he needs to be qualified as an expert. So you're going to see that after he's done giving all of his qualifications, the defense attorney is going to get up and voir dire him and give him ask him some more questions and say, I don't think he should be admitted as an expert, Your Honor, because I don't think he's qualified. So that's why we need to hear all of this. I know it can be a little bit boring, but we're going to decide between him and the defense expert who testified today, which one you think has better qualifications and a better opinion. So let's listen.
Athens meets Sarasota, and I thought I wouldn't even know what to order if I ever walked in. Little did I know that I would end up marrying Patty just a couple years later. She now works with her sister and our nephew, and they have started a new chain of restaurants called The Breakfast Company. There's one in the Landings. There's one on State Road 70, and soft grand opening was yesterday for the new site across from UTC Mall.
So how did you, lack of a better term, get this gig? How did I find you to advise the jury on these issues?
So one of my longtime friends is Steve Heese. Steve is someone that I met during the Reagan administration when I was doing my residency in Philadelphia. Steve is a very smart businessman. He ultimately went on to be one of the owners of Chris Craft Boats.
This is irrelevant as voting third parties who were not parties to this.
Sustainments.
I'll speed it up here.
You knew Steve Heese and
I knew Steve Heese. We had dinner. Our wives are friends. So the four of us were having dinner. Steve actually knew Greg as his chief counsel, I believe, for Chris Craft Boats.
Sustained.
That's all I had on that, actually.
Objection, Your Honor.
so-
Who cares?
I'm not
Why don't
completed.
you let him finish? Thank you.
Exactly.
Finish the credentials.
Okay. All right. So in terms of operating hospitals and in advising the jury on your opinions here today, tell the jury about your practical experience in evaluating the operation of hospitals and noting where there are issues that must be resolved.
So it started, my involvement in assessing and helping hospitals run smarter actually began when I was in practice. I was on the medical executive committee of Doctors Hospital in Sarasota for 4 years. I was elected as the chief of staff, but my surgical complications did not allow me to fulfill that role. After graduation from business school, as I said, I was recruited to the advisory board, which was a think tank and a consultancy. So my roles involved going to health systems, hospitals, and large medical groups, giving them business insights about how to work in this new Affordable Care Act paradigm primarily. And then for HCA, as I said, I was a chief medical officer at Brandon, which was about a 375 bed hospital, which has subsequently grown, and then had responsibility for about 3,500 beds all total between California and Nevada in my role as division chief.
And can you explain how HR, if you will, played a role, whether you were either directly involved or over and making decisions in terms of the HR departments in these different hospitals?
So I didn't have any direct responsibility for the HR department, but I did have leadership responsibility or executive accountability for the medical staff office. And that was a responsibility that I shared with my CEO. I had direct responsibility for the quality department. And I had a VP, a vice president of quality who headed up that department and had maybe half a dozen to a dozen members on her team. I also oversaw a couple of other organizations, including computer physician order entry.
Were you involved in some of your roles in the development of hospital policy on various topics?
Yes, sir. So I didn't write the policy, but we met with the folks who did. That typically was somebody with a legal degree, so that we made sure that we wrote it the right way. But yes, I was involved in those conversations as they applied to clinical quality and patient safety primarily.
And some of the different policies and procedures that we will discuss here today, have you been directly involved or overseen the direct involvement in the development and management of those policies?
Well, not the policies that we'll look at today, but policies like that as they applied to
Obviously not
our
these,
hospitals. Yes, sir.
but in other hospitals.
Yes, sir.
And then in terms of your as Chief Medical Officer in Brandon Regional Hospital, then can you explain your role in terms of overseeing or developing hospital policy and procedures of the type that we'll be discussing here today?
Yes, sir. So for instance, one of the things that we did, aside from just writing policy, was actually working on performance improvement. So for instance, shortly after I started at the hospital in the early part of 2013, we participated in an effort to improve how we were doing with sepsis, which is an overwhelming bacterial infection. When I joined the hospital, if you were diagnosed with septic shock, there was a 44% chance that you would die rather than be discharged home. That was unacceptable from a clinical perspective. Average nationally is about 30%. Before the end of the year, we actually worked as a team, and I had a part in leading that team. We worked as a team to put in new procedures based on what evidence and data showed us was the right path. We created guardrails for our clinical teams to stay between.
What's a guardrail?
That's my term for it. We said, look, the data and evidence says that this is acceptable and this is acceptable, and there's a range, right? So I think about it as guardrails, and we leave which lane to be in. We leave that up to the physician based on their knowledge, their skill, their education, their judgment. But we know that if you stay between the guardrails, data and the evidence points us to the patient is more likely to get the favorable outcome that they want and we want for them. So we were able to lower our mortality rate from 44% to 24%. And we maintained that performance for several years in the mid to low 20s.
And can you explain your involvement with the standards that you'll be speaking about today? They're called CMC or CMA?
CMS?
CMS standards.
Yeah. So, lawyers frequently talk about standards of care, and that's a legal definition about what is expected a physician to do when treating whatever. Sure.
He doesn't want him talking about the law, but he's right. That is the way that the judge is going to instruct the jury later. Did the hospital deviate from the accepted standards of medical care? Lynn, I got your email. Welcome to the Mod Squad. Thank you.
And
Thank you
insofar
for
as the
opening.
CMA standards,
Continue, Mr. Anderson.
and insofar as the CMA standards, based on the court's ruling, I want to ensure that we just stay involved with your knowledge of the development of them and any participation you had.
Sure. And it's CMS,
CMS.
Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is the federal organization that oversees Medicare and Medicaid spending. So I had nothing to do with developing the CMS standards, but these really are there's a book referred to as, titled CMS Conditions of Participation. And these are the standards that every hospital is held to if they want to participate.
Yeah, I know.
Sustained.
We can't go into the operation of them, just your background in terms of actually learning about them, using them, developing them.
Understood. Thank you. So the CMS standards were what I, as a practicing physician and a physician medical staff leader, was held accountable to. The standards were also what I was held accountable to as a chief medical officer to make sure that my hospital was meeting those standards.
All right, they're going to keep going back and forth, and then you know, Hunter's going to ask him some questions.
Which I've listed out in this.
If you could give the jury just an overview of everything that you'd received towards offering opinions here.
Will do. It's quite lengthy, but it's multiple depositions.
Received towards offering opinions here.
So he's going to tell us now what he reviewed in order to come to his opinion, and you're going to see how different it is from what the defense expert reviewed. He's highly qualified, this guy. He's been a CMO at several hospitals. He's been in hospital administration. He's had a lot of success doing it. Long, storied career. I think he's qualified.
It's quite lengthy, but it's multiple depositions from some of the treating physicians, from Catherine Beatty, some documents from Johns Hopkins variety of organizations, including All Children's Hospital. Some policies and procedures from from All Children's Hospital. The medical staff rules and regulations dated February 2016. Depositions of Dr. Napolitano and Perno, Patty Condon, Jackie Crane, organizational structure, org charts for Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, reports from various experts.
Okay. And what was your assignment here?
So you asked me to be a part of this this litigation, this case, to really help the judge and jury understand how hospitals work. They're very complex. They're very complicated. The hospitals that I worked in, Johns Hopkins actually has another layer on top of it because it is an academic medical center, which has its own kind of fiefdom, right? So I was really brought on.
Check the relevance. Johns Hopkins is not part of the case.
And if you can speak to any experiences you had where you were working with or developing things with Johns Hopkins, any one of them.
Yeah, so I'll be more precise about Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. I apologize. So I'm sorry, the question was, sir?
Well, that's a good point. I added on to it about any experiences you had actually working with Johns Hopkins in developing any policies, procedures, or other programs.
So I never worked directly with Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. When I was at Brandon Regional Hospital as the chief medical officer, as I said, we opened a pediatric hospital within the hospital. We actually worked with Jackie Crane, Dr. Napolitano, and other leaders from All Children's to help us build that hospital within the hospital.
Okay, so he worked with Dr. Napolitano. Remember, he was the risk management doctor that they had testified that he only learned about Maya's case in 2023 when he saw it in USA Today. He was part of the risk management committee at JHatch during the time that Maya was admitted there. And he also worked with Jackie Crane and somebody else. So this is very interesting. He's worked with these people before. Hudson, this guy made straight A's in public speaking, but was he #1 in his class for report writing? That's what I want to know.
Pediatric aspect of it.
Yeah.
Just want to rewind that a touch.
Regional Hospital as the chief medical officer. As I said, we opened a pediatric hospital within the hospital. We actually worked with Jackie Crane, Dr. Napolitano, and other leaders from All Children's to help us build that hospital within the hospital.
For the pediatric aspect of it.
Yeah, yes, sir. It was a pediatric hospital within the hospital.
Okay. Now, so that the jury understands here in terms of the hierarchies in hospitals, and can we bring up I guess it's now 2802 organizational chart, published, Judge, if we may.
Is it in evidence?
Yeah, it's the 2015 version we talked about.
Sorry, Judge, I want to hold our witness. Please don't forget.
Are you finished with your credential background?
Yes.
Then Mr. Hunter can go here.
That's right, Jason. No risk management in real time. The only people who handled this case in real time were Hunter and Shapiro.
Good afternoon, sir.
Just a few questions at this point. As I understand it, your first billet, if you will, as a hospital executive, was it Brandon Regional Hospital?
Yes, sir. My first hospital-based leadership position. Yes, sir.
And before that, and to the present day, you had not practiced in a children's hospital outside of medical school, correct?
As an obstetrician gynecologist, yes, I have not practiced medicine at a children's hospital, and I apologize for not being more clear before.
Not a problem. And you haven't worked in a children's hospital since medical school.
That's not entirely true because, again, Brandon Regional had the children's hospital within the bigger hospital, and Sunrise Hospital has Sunrise Children's Hospital.
Okay, well, let's compare and contrast. For a
Okay,
moment. Brandon Regional Hospital is a general hospital, correct?
that is correct.
Is it licensed as such by the state of Florida?
Sir, I'm not aware of the license.
You don't have any idea what the licensure classifications are?
That's outside my wheelhouse as a
Would you have any reason to doubt that it is licensed as a Class 1 general community hospital?
That's outside of my wheelhouse. I wouldn't even be able to comment
Do
on
you have
this.
any idea?
No idea.
Okay, we can agree that it takes adult patients.
It does.
That's primarily what it does, correct?
It does.
And it does adult surgery.
It does.
And the hospital within a hospital is just one floor of a general hospital, correct?
When I was there, it was limited to one floor. Yes, sir.
And that wasn't there when you started. It was something y'all developed.
That's correct.
Okay. It has nearly 400 beds.
Correct.
It's in a community as a community hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't have a reputation for referrals far outside as a tertiary care institution.
Actually, it does a lot of intake for some of the specialty work that it does, particularly in neurosurgery and other services that aren't maintained at most community hospitals.
And they're adult services.
Yes, sir. But we also took in transfers of newborns.
Okay. So if you had problems with a newborn, you transferred it, correct?
Well, we kept most of them at the hospital.
But if you had a complicated newborn, you transferred it to a children's hospital, correct?
For the most part, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you have any idea what the number of beds at all children's has?
I believe it's in the neighborhood of 240, 250.
What is their licensure? Do you know?
I have no idea, sir.
Do you know what the acuity level of the beds at all children's are?
I do not.
Do you know how many NICU beds they have?
I do not.
Do you have any idea how many PICU beds they've got?
I do not.
To talk about your hospital in Las Vegas, you never worked in that hospital, did you?
I was in the hospital on a weekly basis, but I never had an office in that hospital.
You didn't have day-to-day responsibilities for being the CMO of that hospital, correct?
That is correct. I was that CMO's boss.
Okay. And you were over the top of him and didn't have command of the executive team, did you?
Not command, no, sir.
Okay. So you were not directly responsible for operations in that hospital. You were supervising what your employee did in that hospital, correct?
I was accountable to the work that was done there,
Okay.
but not responsible for the day-to-day operations.
Okay, that's my point. Okay, so how many beds was that hospital?
The hospital writ large is, I believe, just over 800 beds, and I believe just over 200, I believe it's 206 of those are part of Sunrise Children's Hospital,
Is it separate?
The hospital is a multi-block complex. Sunrise Children's has an entrance on the south side of the complex. The adult hospital has its entrance on the northwest corner. The emergency room is both the adult and children's emergency rooms are on the east side. So I don't know how to answer that. They are, when you're leaving one hospital and entering the other, but there are contiguous hallways.
Are they separately licensed?
To my knowledge, they are.
And how are the licenses classified? Do you know?
Again, that's above my pay grade.
Okay. What is the acuity level of the beds at the children's hospital?
So the Children's Hospital actually has every conceivable every conceivable clinical service, including open heart. They have a very active open heart program. They have neurosurgical, pediatric open heart, pediatric neurosurgical. Sunrise Children's is the tertiary care hospital for the state of Nevada.
Okay. And your responsibility was overseeing the CMO of that hospital.
My responsibility, my accountability to my bosses in Nashville was to make sure that that hospital was running. I relied on my chief medical officer as my right hand for making sure that that happened. But at the end of the day, if something went afoul, I had to answer to it.
And when were you working with those folks?
Began in the fourth quarter of 2018, and I finished in the fourth quarter of 2021 for 3 years.
So those 3 years, but during the time this incident took place, you were at Brandon Hospital. correct?
That's correct.
And at the time this incident took place, you had not worked in a pediatric hospital in 30 years, correct?
Again, that goes back to my clinical career.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But
Might not be 30, but more than 15.
going back to medical school?
And residency training, so up to 1991. It's pretty close. We're
I'll
getting
leave
old,
it
aren't
after
we?
you. All right. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, if we could bring up, I think what I was doing here is having, okay, this isn't confusing at all, is it? All right, let me represent to you. And for the record,
I guess Hunter's got no objection to him being qualified as an expert, but I think his qualifications are excellent. All of that digging into his pediatric children's hospital experience, I don't think it matters. He's been in hospital administration for many years, whether they were pediatric hospitals or not. I still think he's qualified to testify after reviewing all the things that he did.
this is Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. Well, actually, it's identified by exhibit. Where it is. We gotta get set up here again, Judge.
Yes, it was in front of the jury, Zoe.
All right, so this is exhibit Johns Hopkins, actually 2802, the Johns Hopkins organizational chart as of 2015, the year before what we're talking about here. Now,
I'm sorry, the date on mine says February of 2016.
that
Are you
that'll still
looking at
be
the same?
fine, I think. It was 2015 issued and 2016 on it.
No, we said 2016.
Revised 2022, 2616.
All right, so it's 2016.
Okay.
Okay, can you take the jury?
You're on Millie Rush. I'm sorry. We have an issue with this exhibit.
There's some issues with the flow chart because they have one with one date on it, one with another date on it.
All right, so before we get to the organizational chart, can you tell the jury a little bit of the history of how All Children's Hospital became Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, Foundation, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Are you aware of the circumstances surrounding the acquisition, of the date and the general terms of how Johns Hopkins how All Children's Hospital became Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Foundation Judge, may need to approach.
A lot of questions he doesn't like. And yes, it is complex regional pain syndrome. Isn't that what I said? Did I not say complex? I know these things, you guys. I just have a million things in my head. Sarah.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Sarah. I love soccer like Maya loves cake.
Ask you if this was something you relied on in reviewing the background of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
We have the zip number.
2300.
Yes, Mr. Anderson, it is.
Can you tell the jury approximately when All Children's Hospital became Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
On April 1st, 2011.
And is Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital part of the Johns Hopkins Hospital System? If you know.
I believe that Ms. Crane described it as the sole corporate member, JHHS,
Right.
and they did appear on the 2012 org chart. I've not seen the 2016 version.
So then let's bring up the 2016 org chart, if we have it now. All right, oh, this is just so much less complicated. Now, can you, the first thing we'd like to know is your position at, when you were working for Hospital Corporation of America, where would you fit in this? Was there a similar position?
Well, I don't see a specific box that identifies chief medical officer
Mhm.
on the on this All Children's Hospital Chart 1.
Right? Okay. Are there any equivalent positions there? Just to orient the jury.
Right, I'm looking. At the time, I believe they had a vice president of medical affairs, Dr. Brigitte Mueller in 2016. I'm looking for her box on this org chart.
Let's go to the next page, please. And what I'm looking for here, and you can stop us when we. What I'm trying to look at here, and there's Dr. Muir. So this position right there.
I see it.
Okay. So let's then, if we can scroll to the next page. All right. What I'm trying to establish here is the chain of command from the president down to risk management. Okay. Now, if you can identify.
I cannot read this, and I have a giant screen next to me, and the font is so small that I can't read it at all. So don't feel bad if you can't read it either.
Risk management, which I used to be able to on the old chart.
Right. So risk management is on the upper right corner. Right. Thank you for the red box. Risk management is one of 5 organizations that report directly up to senior counsel, Jackie Crane.
Mhm.
Jackie Crane then has direct reporting responsibilities signified by a solid line.
Yeah.
One goes directly to President Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Ellen, MD. One goes to the right to JHHS, which is the Baltimore-based organization. And then one goes further to the right to the internal auditor.
All right. So in terms of the level, I see that the risk management department is separated off to report directly up to the senior general counsel.
Overall, you can answer.
Yes, that is correct. Risk management was responsible for reporting up to the senior counsel, Jackie Crane. I just want to point out, our expectation as leaders is that you not only expected your reports to direct.
Your Honor, it's not responsive to a question.
Thank you.
What, if anything, is different about this that you were about to explain?
I was just going to explain that there's a push of information up to your boss. Rule of thumb, never let your boss be surprised. But there's also a responsibility to pull information up because you are accountable as a leader to the organizations that you lead. You can delegate out tasks. You can delegate out.
Your Honor, it's not responsive to a question, but editorial comment has no foundation.
Overrule the foundation, but let's have a question next time.
Well, why is the pull part of this so important?
So as a leader, you are responsible for what your teams are doing. So they should be reporting up to you, but it's your job, if needed, to pull information from them so that you have a clear understanding of how they are performing on tasks that you have delegated down to them.
So for the general counsel, senior counsel right here, and the senior counsel reports to the president.
That's correct.
The general counsel,
Senior counsel.
senior counsel, for your background training experience, would he or she have a duty to pull information then on a timely basis from risk management?
Objection, I lack foundation in this organization, you speculate.
Let's just go with non-speaking objections, please.
Foundation speculation.
Overrule.
You can respond.
Yes, sir. In an organization such as this, you would expect that there would be a push and pull accountability.
And would that be on a reasonably frequent basis? Or constant?
Generally, I would meet with my direct reports on at least a weekly basis, if not more frequently.
All right. So if you could then tell us whether, as to this chart, then the risk management was directly reporting and the senior counsel directly pulling information up to the most senior levels of executives in this operation.
Objection, Your Honor, relative 403, lack foundation. Overrule.
You can answer.
Yes. So the senior counsel should have been getting information from risk management on a recurring basis and sharing the most relevant information up to the president, chief executive officer, and JHHS, and as needed to internal audit.
Now, are you generally familiar with the facts of this case, the Kowalski's versus Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
I am.
And are you familiar with the facts leading to the time spent by Maya Kowalski at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital from October of 2016 through January of 2017.
I am.
And what was significant to you in your review of the facts there that would make this case one that the senior counsel would or should have rather had continuous knowledge of?
So this case was,
Yes, Your Honor, Reynolds Foundation, outside, please.
I need to hear that question again, please, Mr. Court Reporter.
What was the significance to you and your review of the facts that there would make this case one that the most senior counsel would or should have rather had continuous knowledge of?
What was those last few words? I'm sorry.
Oh, the mic's still on. We can hear what they're saying.
This is beginning of the day.
I didn't quite hear what Court Reporter said.
It was what we call an inartful question.
I think they forgot to put on the
level.
sound machine.
Clear. Of in multiple depositions, including those that were aired.
Answer that one.
Thank you. So in multiple depositions, including those that were aired this morning, it was clear that risk management was involved in helping to influence or make decisions of regarding or supporting Maya Kowalski's care. The references in the depositions suggest that that was a fairly frequent conversation. On page 166 of Catherine Beatty's deposition, she describes conversations that she had with risk management that describes, quote, this case was different.
Your Honor, object to testimony.
Sustained.
You can simply just, without getting it in, just reference the
Sure.
references.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Have you ever testified before?
No,
As
sir.
an expert?
No, sir.
All right. All right,
Your
so
Honor, court, please, the witness seems to have been reading from something just a
I'm-
moment ago.
He's
For somebody who's never testified before as an expert or ever, he's doing an incredible job. He's doing a better job than a lot of the hired guns that we see that testify all the time in other trials. Wow, I'm impressed.
got the deposition.
I'd like to know what else he's got.
What do you have, Eric? Why don't you show it to Mr. Anderson, who can show it to Mr. Humphrey.
Sure.
it's his file.
Why don't you, Mr. Anderson, why don't you go get it and show Mr. Humphrey?
It's the problem with your witnesses bringing in documents and notes is that the defense attorney or the other attorney gets to look at everything. Obviously, I'm probably going to take some time, so let's go through here.
Whatever you're looking at.
Understood.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
And then pro tem.
You may.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
As the reference or sources for your opinion. in that regard.
I'm sorry. Can you
Ye-
reorient me?
Yeah, can we read back the last question?
This one.
Yeah, you're right. Green-eyed Southern girl. That can work both ways.
One question is, you can simply just without reading it and just references.
I think the one before that.
Yay, aka
Based
cat lady.
on your knowledge of the facts, can you explain to the jury why this case, this situation, whatever you want to call it, about the Maya Kowalski situation was one that should have, if it didn't reach the level of senior management, then there was an objection.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So as I said, risk management seemed to have pretty recurrent involvement in the case. That's the risk management department. The case was described by Kathy Beatty in a conversation that she cited in her testimony as being different and discussing that with risk management and explaining multiple reasons why she felt it was different.
And so armed with that information, what should have happened if it actually didn't?
So if this was a case that was constantly pinging in risk management, it seems reasonable that that would be shared with the executive who's in charge of risk management. That would be Senior Counsel Crane.
And so I believe we have an email here from
Spoiler, Joe Kelly.
Published at this time.
I don't think this guy knows Mother
2277,
Teresa.
628 and 629 alpha, previously amended evidence.
You may.
All right. Now, do you note here who this is from?
It's sent from Patricia Condon.
Are you aware of her position?
It indicates that she's a risk management analyst at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
And do you recognize any of the recipients?
It is sent to Jackie Crane, who was senior counsel. It was sent to Louise Barnes-Kurth, who I believe was the head of risk management at that time, and Cindy Driscoll, which is a name that I do not recognize.
Now, if you would review this as to the topic here, you see where they are continuing the allegations of, quote, self-inflicted
I do.
wounds, scratches.
Okay, I'm going to read this to you in case you cannot read it or you're listening and you don't have access to a screen or it's really small on your phone. This is an email from Patty Condon on December 30th of 2016, 6:13 p.m. to Jackie Crane, Louise Barnes-Kurth, and Cindy Driscoll. The subject is case privileged and confidential. Jackie and Louise, I wanted to keep you up to date on the latest with Maya Kowalski. Dr. Majors called late afternoon around 4:15 p.m. to advise she had been updated by Dr. Elliott from the pain team that Maya was now displaying scratches on her forehead and hands, parens, concerned for self-inflicted, end parens. I was able to see this in the notes from Kay Rhodes, ARNP from pain team, and another note. Dr. Majors was very surprised by this due to it was a question, but that was asked of her yesterday while testifying on this case by Maya's mother's attorney, asking about lesions, if there were any. I think that says it's covered by the law and crime logo.
And then if we can keep scrolling down, and how they were asked about.
I did advise Dr. Majors to get pictures of the scratches. I need her to inquiry with Maya about how she got them. Sorry to go on and on, but wanted to keep you in the loop. Happy New Year, Patty. There's a bunch that is redacted as well.
Lesions from Ms. Kowalski, either directly or through her counsel.
Leading Your Honor.
Overruled.
What I see is a quote from Ms. Condon. I did advise Dr. Majors to get pictures of the scratches. I need her to inquiry with Maya how she got them.
And
Just reading the exhibit once again speaks for itself.
Let's not have witnesses read.
does it appear to you that Dr. Majors then from this was advising, or Patty Condon rather, was advising Jackie Crane, among others, about the incident where Maya, what juries heard about, where Maya was stripped down, held down, and photographs taken from her?
Calls for conclusion. Objection calls for conclusion. Relevance. 403.
Overruling the relevance. And overruling the other objections. You can answer.
This does reference a direction, advice to get pictures of the scratches.
And assume for the purposes of this question that the photographs taken of Maya Kowalski were never analyzed as part of the medical records, and a after set were never taken, and that this just appeared to be an unpleasant, highly unpleasant situation for Maya Kowalski without any authorization from parents or anyone else. Is this the type of incident that should be reported up to the highest levels?
Objection, Your Honor. Assumes facts not in evidence. Can we approach on this entire matter just a moment?
He's because he knows he's not going to like this expert's answer on that. Too bad, so sad, Mr. Hunter. Too bad, so sad. Just because you don't like his answer doesn't mean you got to approach, and because he knows what he's going to say.
Management probability.
Not going to be good for
Do you have
him.
an opinion based upon your background?
You can re-ask the question.
Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical, do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether the senior level executives at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital were made aware of the situation involving obtaining pictures of Maya Kowalski?
Objection foundation and proper hypothetical.
Overruled. You can answer.
Okay.
From this email, it's apparent that Jackie Crane received this email and the information was there for her to receive.
And based upon your background and training and your knowledge, what would be the appropriate thing to do if a senior level person, management level person, received reports that could be construed as a battery upon a child? What should they do?
In my experience as a chief medical officer, if I saw information like this from one of my direct reports, I would investigate. I would get involved. I would make sure that I understood what was going on.
Would you get personally involved, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Form
And
objective relevance.
He already answered it.
so now, from your review of the facts of this case, can you tell the jury, and have you had the opportunity to review various emails and other documents involving the exchange of information between Ms. Condon, Ms. Crane, and others between the Risk Management Committee and the senior level to determine whether there was an appropriate response back down from senior management to investigate this further?
I have seen emails where information was shared with Ms. Crane. I've not seen any emails that there was a response directing other actions to be taken.
And assuming that these photographs were taken several days later, do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether this failure to investigate caused or contributed to the injury done to Maya Kowalski from the photo session?
Objection, speculation. No foundation.
Yes, sir, I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
I believe that it did contribute to the injury. And I think that I was here on Monday and I heard that loud and clear from Maya Kowalski herself.
Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. Yes, Rotofib, that is a great question. Doctor, do you have an opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to, that's the standard. That's the way you have to ask that question. But in this question, it was, do you have an opinion with the degree of not reasonable medical certainty, because he was not testifying as a treating doctor, but reasonable. Let's go back and listen to that again. Administrative probability. Depends on what they're testifying as.
Seen emails where information was shared with Ms. Crane. I've not seen any emails that there was a response directing other actions to be taken.
And assuming that these photographs were taken several days later, do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience into a reasonable medical management probability?
Reasonable
Whether this
medical
failure to
management
investigate
probability. Reasonable medical management probability. It's a tongue twister.
caused or contributed to the injury done to Maya Kowalski from the photo session?
Objection, speculation. No foundation.
He's allowed to have an opinion.
Yes, sir, I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
I believe that it did contribute to the injury. And I think that I was here on Monday and I heard that loud and clear from Maya Kowalski herself.
And in this instance, I'd like to bring up Exhibit 1082, and for the record, that's the Johns Hopkins patient family rights there. And if we could go to the next page that sets forth the actual, and then if we could go down or look at the first two under expect privacy and always receive polite. And now, based on your knowledge of what happened to Maya Kowalski just in this incident, do you have an opinion based upon your background training?
Okay, this is the patient bill of rights that's given to you every single time you go into the hospital or one of your kids goes into the hospital, and you sign a whole stack of papers, and this is always in there. And I'd like to know if anybody's ever actually read it before they've signed it while you're in the hospital when they give you 7,000 papers to sign. But here's what he's pointing out right now. You have the right to expect privacy and respect while you receive your health care. You have the right to always receive polite and respectful care. And he's going to ask the witness whether or not he believes Maya was afforded those rights.
Training and experience as to whether Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital violated its own internal statement of rights to patients.
Objection, relevance outside of plea.
Overruled.
Yes, I do
Overruled.
have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
I do believe that there were episodes that have been reported in testimony that were outside of these directives as rights that patients should have and expect.
Same question as before. Based on your background, training, and experience, if a senior member of management learns that patients' stated rights are being violated on a consistent basis, what should they do?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance foundation outside the pleading.
Overruled. What should the patient do if they find out that these rights that they signed when they came into the hospital are being violated? What should they do?
Again, as a leader, if I saw this kind of information coming up from one of my direct reports, yes, I would get personally involved and I would find a way to get us back on track.
And would that involve, what if any training would that involve as to the participants?
I would certainly make sure that they understood what the patient rights were that we were advertising as affording every single patient in the hospital. I would make sure that they understood what was in bounds and what was out of bounds.
And what if anything would you do to ensure that if a particular employee, in this case, let's say Kathy Beatty,
Let's say.
rejected that training? What is
Let's
your
say
opinion
Kathy
based on
Beatty.
your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability should be the action taken with an employee in this situation who either fails or refuses to accept this training?
Objection, relevance foundation outside the pleadings, no foundation.
I don't understand the question. So I'm gonna sustain it on my own. I don't understand what you just asked.
Fine. Maybe I'll ask another. All right. So what is appropriate in this circumstance for the retraining of Kathy Beatty if there was a circumstance such as you have learned repeated behavior violating the patient's internal rights? What type of training should be undertaken in addition to just educating them on this?
Objection. I don't understand that one. Same objection as before.
Goes to negligent training.
As to the training?
I don't understand your question, Mr. Anderson. I'm sorry.
I'll move on, Judge. All right. I would like to direct you over to the farthest column right before the black column right there, and the top is got an arrow next to it. And it involves the ability to talk to another physician outside of this.
Okay, this is one of the patient's bill of rights, I guess, as well. You have the right to talk with another doctor or specialist at your own request and expense, or to ask for a transfer to another healthcare provider, providing it is medically acceptable and the other provider will accept your transfer. We've heard a lot of testimony on that, on the transfer and them asking for a transfer. And we found out from reading the complaint, they asked for a transfer before Maya was ever placed into state custody. We've also heard that in the testimony, but they were told security would take them and they could get arrested. I don't know if they were told they could get arrested, but they said security would stop them from trying to leave AMA against medical advice.
I want you to assume, for the purposes of this question, that one or more of Maya's treating physicians, in particular Dr. Ashras Hannah, attempted to visit Maya in order to gain an understanding of her physical condition, how she was doing, and that he was rejected, not from trying to go and treat, but simply as a visitor who was a doctor. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital violated this right that Maya Kowalski had?
Objection, relevance assumes facts, not evidence. It's all hypothetical.
Sustained.
Could you go a little further down the objection list, Hunter? You forgot hearsay, asked and answered, and a bunch of other ones, but he said about 10.
There's been evidence of Dr. Hannah.
Sustained.
All right, now, has it come to your attention through your investigation that the Kowalskis were attempting to exit Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital during the first 7 days of Maya post admission.
Yes,
Has it come to your attention that over that period of time, there was no court order that authorized keeping her there?
yes.
I'd like to show and publish now trial exhibit 2237-005. And this is from the Johns Hopkins discharge of patient against medical advice. First, what is AMA?
Against medical advice.
Does it have the power of law?
No.
All right, so if we look at this chart down here and we continue down, from your review of it and further down, is this describing what the Johns Hopkins personnel should be doing in the event that a parent disagrees with their proposed treatment and wants to just get their child out of there?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance foundation, lack of foundation, lack of credit.
This is the foundation.
Approach, please.
More approaching. Objection, Your Honor. This is going to be really, really bad for me in my case. Could you please let me stall a little bit? Colleen McBee says, I wish the jury could have heard a refresh of this testimony juxtaposed to today's correlating defense witness. Me too. That's why we're doing this tonight. This is a great idea.
005. Now, leaving out the comment on the lower right, under.
I'm looking for the document. It's not up.
Okay, let's put up 2237-005.
I've got it. Thanks.
Previously.
While we're waiting for that to come up, let me just thank Dawn Burke so much for the very generous $49.99 super chat. Thank you for playing this case. Thank you for supporting the channel. I appreciate you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
And if you look at this flow chart here, down below, in all cases, does it appear to you, and based on your knowledge of the power or lack thereof of AMA, that Johns Hopkins breached its own internal rules regarding the ability of the Kowalskis to leave simply on the basis of AMA?
Objection, Your Honor. It's leading improper predicate, relevance and foundation.
We just discussed that.
You can answer.
Thank you. So I wasn't a party to the conversations, but there is nothing in this policy or this flow chart that should keep Maya's parents from walking out the door. It may be against medical advice, but there's nothing here.
And to the extent that they prevented in some form or fashion, either through security or through representation of some kind, the Kowalskis from leaving with Maya. And I'm talking about this period, first week. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether they violated this internal rule regarding AMA?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance foundation assumes facts not in evidence and fails to take into account Chapter 39 and object on the basis of the latter.
He limited to the first week, so I'm going to overrule the objection. He limited the question to the first week.
Understood, Your Honor. It's the 24-hour rule as well.
You can continue, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
My opinion is that they did not follow their own internal procedure.
And confining it then to just this week, we're talking about before there was any court intervention. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience and your review of the depositions of the Kowalskis and the facts of this case as to whether that action in violating the rules caused or contributed to harm to Maya Kowalski?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer.
Yes, I do have an opinion, and I do believe that it contributed to the injury.
I'd like to ask you, and I want to focus now, go back to 1082, if we could. May I publish, Judge, the same patient's rights?
You may.
Now, if we look on the center column, the third from the bottom, where it discusses cultural values and spiritual beliefs, let me ask you to assume for the purposes of this question that Maya Kowalski was prevented on one or more occasions from practicing her religion, either by not being able to pray with or see her own parish priest, or by having certain materials taken from her or not provided to her, I should say, or by having this religion criticized. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience as to whether Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital violated their internal statement of rights that they be allowed to practice their cultural values and spiritual beliefs?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, like the foundation, failure to take into account the interplay of DCF in Chapter 39 and outside the plea.
Overall, the answer.
You answer.
Yes, I do have an opinion, and I do believe that they did not respect the patient rights that you've highlighted here.
So if the jury believes all the facts that these things were taken away from Maya, like we've heard about the communion wafers that they thought were dosed with liquid K, so they took those away. They took away her rosary beads, her prayer book. The other night we watched the testimony of that lovely woman who came in with the traveling Mary. She was turned away. She couldn't pray with Maya. And they believe this expert witness who says that's a violation of their own policy. I think that's a win on that count of this complaint. There's a ton of counts in this complaint. We haven't even gone through the counts yet. What we reviewed earlier were just some of the background facts, but we haven't gone through the counts. This testimony could solidify that.
Did you see anywhere, check that. Did you have the opportunity to go through, if not all, the majority of the medical file during the time that Maya Kowalski was in Johns Hopkins from October of 2016 through January of 2017?
Did I have the opportunity?
Yes. Did you review it?
I did not review much of the medical record because I'm being asked not as a medical expert, but as an expert in how hospitals are meant to run.
Then I'm not going to ask the next question. I want you to assume for the purposes of this question that the Kowalskis informed the physicians during this first week that they had a different type of medical treatment and did not want to move forward with the hospital's recommendations. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience, and to a reasonable medical management probability as to whether the hospital violated the second from the bottom of the first column to right to refuse treatment?
Objection, like the foundation and relevance, Your Honor. Goes outside the plea.
Overall.
Yes, I do have an opinion.
Okay, this right says you have the right to refuse treatment, except that written by law, and to be told of the effects of your choice. They wanted to leave the hospital against medical advice and under the patient bill of rights that this hospital gave them when they signed into the emergency room before they were, even after they were admitted. They were given that right, and the expert is going to say,
And this right clearly states that you have a right to refuse treatment except that written by law.
Have you seen anything in these records or been told in any of your investigation that the Kowalski's decision to be treated, have their daughter treated outside of Johns Hopkins violated any law?
Objection, Your Honor.
Same rule.
I've seen nothing to the sort.
Have you become aware that there was an incident where Maya Kowalski was placed into a quote surveillance room and told that it was some form of EKG when in fact she was being surveyed by the hospital?
Objection, the foundation, misrepresentation. of record.
surveilled, I think he meant to say.
I understand that it was an EEG, electroencephalogram, not an electrocardiogram. And those rooms in pediatric hospitals, it's normal for EEGs to be videotaped. That's not a practice in an adult setting.
In this instance, did it come to your attention that no actual EEG was ever performed?
There was certainly no evidence of that on the videos, that they were performing an EEG. That would involve a lot of wires and it would be very easy to see.
All right. And assume further, for the purposes of this question, that there are no results, analysis, or barely mention of this procedure in the medical records surrounding it. you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience, and to a reasonable medical probability as to whether, again, this violated Maya Kowalski's patient's rights to be able to move freely around?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance Foundation 403 is outside the pleadings.
Overruled.
He's never testified before, but he knows enough to stop and wait for the objection before he starts talking, which is unlike a lot of other witnesses we've seen who just plow through the objection and keep talking.
Yeah.
She was placed in an EEG room and surveilled, but that apparently never made it to the medical records,
Correct.
which would indicate to me that it was not part of the care and treatment of Maya Kowalski.
And so then, do you have any opinions as to why they were doing this?
Objection calls for speculation. No foundation. Overruled.
If that's right.
It certainly wasn't to treat her and help her feel better, because it was never documented. Rule of thumb is if it's not documented, it wasn't done. As to whether they were trying to just observe her activities, her actions surreptitiously, that's as likely as any reason for it.
Would you expect in that circumstance for there to have been some documentation in the medical records, some discussion of results or observations?
Objection, lack of foundation. He's indicated he didn't review the record.
Okay, I'll move on.
And Mr. Anderson, the next 7 minutes, let's bring us in for a good point for a break.
Yes, sir.
We did see some text messages that said from one doctor to another, a 10-year-old can't keep up this charade forever. We know why they were doing it. They were surreptitiously recording her to try and get evidence to support their false allegations of MBP to prove that she wasn't really sick, that she was faking. They put the commode just out of reach because they wanted her to get up, and they wanted to prove on video that she could really walk. And instead she defecated on herself. So that didn't really work out for them.
I'd like to bring up Exhibit 3002-0002. And for the record, this is the quote consent to medical routine diagnostic procedures and treatment. May I publish, Your Honor? Present evidence 3002-0002. It's a defensive exhibit.
That's right.
It is. May I
It
publish?
is, Your Honor. This was a carve out. It is request, I believe.
It's not in evidence. You either need to get in evidence or you can't.
We don't object to it, Judge. It's not evidence right now. You're going to lose it. Go ahead.
Then what's this number?
3002-0002.
I'll receive that exhibit in evidence. Now you can put it up for grants.
Now, if you could look at the second page of this, and you've got it up. All right. So in this, first, tell me, if you can, have you had involvement in either the development or the evaluation of these types of consents placed in the admissions packages of the patients before?
I've never developed a consent to treat. I'm certainly familiar with them as both in my professional life and as a patient.
All right, and so in this particular one, then there's a consent to treatment that involves understanding that imaging technology, videotapes, photographs, closed-circuit TV monitoring patient care may be used. You see that in the course of treatment?
During the course of treatment.
And why is that phrase, during the course of treatment, significant to any consent that the Kowalskis gave or did not give?
The hospital is trying to say that when they signed this paper, the Kowalskis gave consent for Maya to be videotaped, and that it was perfectly fine that they were videotaping her. He's going to tell you why, in his expert opinion, that's not okay.
Objection to relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So in the deposition this morning that that was shown of Dr. Perno, he said that the consent to
Your Honor, I
treat.
object to the comment about.
It's the same.
You can just, you don't have to reference it there. Just your opinion.
Okay, I apologize.
Go ahead. No,
It's been testified that the consent to treat gave the legal.
Same objection, Your Honor.
does this,
I'm sorry.
I'll rephrase. In your practical and clinical experience, is there a requirement that any such video or photographs have to be part of actual treatment in order for these consents to apply?
Objection form calls for conclusion, relevance, overruled.
Yes, it's clearly stated that videotapes, photographs, and closed circuit television monitoring of patient care may be used during the course of treatment.
And so if the jury were to want to determine whether this consent had any validity, what would they want to look for in the medical records around the time of any such photos or video?
Objection, foundation, speculation.
Overrule those two objections.
At a very minimum, I would expect that the videos, photographs, etc., would be part of the medical record if, in fact, it was part of a course of treatment.
And would you expect there to be discussion or analysis of them as to the why, how, and result?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overrule the answer.
Yes, I would expect that it would be referenced in a progress note. I would expect that there would be results or interpretations, just like any other test.
Bam. Bam, bam, bam. Gotcha. Not in the medical records, is it? That video. It's not even, is it even referenced in the medical records? How can you say it's in the course of treatment if it's not in the record? If you didn't chart it, it didn't happen, right?
And so then let me bring up trial exhibit 2277-0. Oh, it's not. I'd like to move in trial exhibit 2277-068, part of the risk management file. Just like the first page. I think the two of them are complete.
If I may inquire, was this one of the ones that we discussed?
It looks like one of the ones we discussed, but it could be in first show.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we take a break? Members of the jury, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, do not do the investigation and receive no information. Let's try to keep it to a 15-minute break, please.
All rise. Doors exit.
Wallstar is doing a squat. Every time what? There's an objection? Is that what you said? Every time there's an objection, you're going to do a squat. All right, they're going to talk about this note, and then we're going to have a little cross. There's not too much more of this left. And then we're going to go to today's expert, and we're going to see, we're going to compare and contrast, just as we would do if we were back in high school in some sort of report writing class. Who was the witness that we were watching the other night that was talking about that she took a report writing class in college? I took a report writing class in college. Court is on a break. All right, this is important because this is a handwritten note.
Based upon your background, training, and experience, does this appear to be an analysis of a medical need or an analysis of another need to prove something, a diagnosis or whatever?
Objection, lead, relevance, foundation.
Overrule the answer.
This does not look like a traditional order, which would be electronically submitted in an electronic medical record. This looks like notes taken. You said it's from the risk management department, so I would say that these are notes taken of a briefing or a meeting where it's decided based on this history, based on this need, we have the okay from risk to do videotaping without an order.
And then in the center of it, it says suspected Munchausen syndrome by proxy. I know you're not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but are you aware of whether suspect Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a diagnosis of a parent or a child?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation, confidence, relevance.
Sustained.
What, if anything, do you know about Munchausen syndrome by proxy?
Same objection, beyond scope.
That's okay. We learned enough about it from other witnesses. It's all right.
And finally, I'll point out here in the center above, it says Dr. Smith, Sally Smith. Do you see that?
I do.
And Dr. Dees and Dr. Smith, Sally. See that?
I see that.
And have you seen in the records where these two doctors were participating in the ordering of this video?
Objection, Foundation.
I do, if you have.
Overruled.
I have not seen that specific order, but I have seen both doctors referenced throughout the stay.
And have you had an opportunity to investigate, as part of your the assignment here, the role of Dr. Sally Smith in all of this?
I have.
And did it come to your attention that Dr. Smith was the director of child abuse education at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital during the relevant period of time?
Objection, Relevance Foundation.
Overruled.
I believe that she was head of that program from 2015 to 2018, if memory serves.
And let's pull up Exhibit 2116. That's in evidence, Your Honor. That's a committee, I believe. Messages. Now, if you take a look there with Dr. Smith, does it appear Dr. Smith and Dr. Paola Dees were messaging back and forth?
Okay, for those of you who have not seen these text messages, I'm going to read them to you because they're a little bit shocking. All right, I just need to enlarge my screen a little bit. This goes back to October 18th, 2016. Hey, this is from Dr. Dees to Sally Smith. Hey, hope you're well. It's Paula Dees from ACH. I'm taking over for Maya Kowalski. Heard about possible neuropsych eval, maybe pending. I also heard we're going to court Thursday. Let me know if you need me to do anything on my end. Thanks, with a double exclamation point. Sally Smith responds to Dr. Dees. Our neuropsychologist was supposed to evaluate Maya today at 1:30, so hopefully that happened or is happening. Not sure about court. Guess I better find out about that. Then from Dr. Dees back to Sally Smith. Haha. Okay, thanks. Just wanted to make sure I don't need to do anything. Thanks again. And then there's another message underneath that. If I can just get that to.
Were messaging back.
From Dr. Dees to Sally Smith, FYI, we were able to move her to a video room last night. Staff has been making notes while watching her remotely. Apparently, she's currently sitting in a bed with legs crossed and has a laptop or something propped on her lap. This is on October 19th, the next day. Sally Smith says back to Dr. Dees, we may need to try to monitor what she's doing online. I wouldn't put anything past her mother.
And forth.
It does.
And so it says, FYI, we were able to move her to a video room last night. Staff has been making notes while watching her remotely. Apparently, she's currently sitting in bed with legs crossed and has a laptop or something propped up on her lap.
Objection.
You see that where it's written there?
I do see that.
Overruled.
And I'll ask you to assume for the purposes of the question that the videotaping in question occurred October 18th and 19th, 2016. And then below it, it says, we may need to try to monitor what she's doing online. I wouldn't put anything past her mother.
I see that.
Objection, Your Honor. Reading the document speaks for itself.
It's a predicate. So if this type of communication was brought to your attention in your roles as director of, again,
Chief Medical Officer.
chief medical officer, where two doctors were conversing in this manner about a patient and a patient's mother, what, if anything, would be your concern?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation Foundation relevant.
What would you do? It's not speculative.
At a minimum, I would address their method for discussing the case and the tone and characterization of their discussion.
Does this tone and characterization, based upon your knowledge and position, both as a physician and as a medical director, does this appear to be a compassionate concern for a little girl?
Objection, foundation, relevance, leading, speculation.
Overruled.
Okay, I need to read this because if your blood's not already boiling, it might be. So take a breath if you need to. Just take a breath. November 5th, 2016, from Sally Smith to Paula Dees. Fortunately, at 10 years old, she can't perform the charade effectively 24/7 and doesn't even know if she's making, quote, physiological, end quote, mistakes. I'm coming to take some pictures of her, quote, affected, end quote, legs for court on Tuesday. Paula Dees says to Sally Smith, absolutely. Then Paula Dees says to Sally Smith, wait, we got to fast forward it a little bit because their logo is blocking it.
In a word, no.
Should we record some
And
more to see if we can catch
should-
that for court?
Doctors be trying to set up their patients to see if their symptoms are correct or not? Or
I'm
real
sorry?
Or not? Should doctors be trying to set up their patients to develop, for lack of a better term, evidence or proof against them for their diagnosis?
Objection to relevance, 403.
Can you, Mr. Corcoran, can you re-ask that one for me?
Yeah, say
Should-
trick, not
Should
set up,
doctors-
trick.
Should doctors be trying to set up their patients to develop, for lack of a better term, evidence or proof against them for their diagnosis?
Sustained.
I'm gonna leave that be for now. I'd like to pull up 2277-630 and 631A. And this is, for the record, an email between Patty Condon, who I'll ask you to assume for the purposes of this question, was one of the risk management personnel.
So the transfer's clear. We're looking at 2277-630A, not,
A,
yeah.
did I say 8?
I think you missed the A.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. Now, I'll also ask you to assume for the purposes of this question that Louise Burns Kurth was the chief, I guess, of the risk management department. And I'll ask you further to assume that this involved a transfer or a discussion of a transfer out of the hospital. And finally, I'll ask you to assume that the Kowalskis would like to get the child out of the hospital, but refuse to do it to a psych patient, inpatient program, any type of psychological or psychiatric program. Now, can you tell the jury whether this type of attitude, as expressed here in this email, is indicative of a close relationship with the patient and her family to work together for a transfer, or whether this was more of a antagonistic relationship?
Objection, relevance, leading, 403, assumes facts not in evidence, improper hypothetical.
Can I have that one again, Mr. Corcoran?
Can you tell me all those objections again?
Also be on scope of pleadings, Judge.
Now, can you tell the jury whether this type of attitude, as expressed here in this email, is indicative of a close relationship with the patient and her family to work together for a transfer, or whether this was more of an antagonistic relationship?
What, if anything, does this email tell you about the risk management position on Maya Kowalski being transferred out?
Same objection, Your Honor. In addition, Greg.
You asked about a relationship between the patient and the family. I believe you meant the
Yeah, I'm
caregiver
sorry.
and the family.
Yes, sir.
This looks more antagonistic than collaborative.
And are you familiar with the problem of a medical narrative starting in a hospital about a patient or situation?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, 403, beyond scope of the pleadings. And I think it's assuming facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
What, if anything, have you experienced in terms of a narrative, that is a story based on a selection of facts and ignoring other facts to prove a point or make a point through the course of your experience in hospitals?
Same objection, Your Honor. In addition, he's used the prior question to suggest an improper question to the witness.
Can we scroll down, please? So I think I'll live with the last answer. Let's proceed. Now, can you?
It's 2142.
2142, you know, to publish.
Yeah, it's an evidence,
It is.
then yes.
If you could review this and see if whether Dr. Sally Smith appears on here.
She's listed on the Standards and Credentials Committee, four names down.
All right. And did you have the opportunity?
Dr. speaks for the situation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Wow, that's huge. They've been claiming all along that Sally Smith has nothing to do with the hospital. She's with an outside agency. Here's a list of people to be in attendance of this Standards and Credentials Committee, which meets on the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 a.m. Wow, what? Who's scheduling their meetings? 6:30 a.m. And of all the people in attendance on the Standards and Credentials Committee for this hospital, Dr. Sally Smith is listed as the fourth person in attendance in the under pediatrics. But no, she's not part of our hospital. That's going to be a hard way to get. It's going to be a hard thing trying to get out of that.
Is what?
I agree with it. We don't need him to basically read the document.
I understand, sir. I just wanted him to identify that she was on there.
Yep, she's on there.
Now, did you have the opportunity through your investigation to try to determine the role of Sally Smith in the care and treatment of Maya Kowalski?
I did.
And what did your investigation reveal?
Objection to predicate like foundation.
You can.
So Dr. Smith was head of an outside agency, but had an internal.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. What, if anything, did it appear to you in reading through this as to Dr. Sally Smith's role at the hospital?
Excuse me, I object. I don't know what he's reading through. I don't know what's being asked.
I assume you're talking about the committee list?
Yes, her overall role at the hospital based on the what we've already.
For a second.
I think we've established that she's part of the hospital. A lot of people are chiming in the chat that the case against her has been settled. And yes, that is true. The case against her and Suncoast has been settled, but she's still part of this case because if the jury finds that she was part of Johns Hopkins and held herself out as part of Johns Hopkins, they can still hold the hospital liable for her actions as well. So just because the case has settled against her and she is no longer a named defendant in the case, the only remaining named defendant is the hospital. They also discontinued against Kathy Beatty personally. The hospital, as the employer, has vicarious liability for their employees, which means that they are responsible for the acts and the actions of their employees. If the jury is convinced that Sally Smith is an agent of the hospital based on her actions and the way they held her out and the way she communicated with the other doctors and all of the other evidence that we are seeing, they can still hold the hospital liable for Sally Smith's actions. Does that make sense? Okay. Hopefully that makes sense.
In evidence?
Yes.
All right. May we publish, Judge?
If it's in evidence, yes.
All right, I'd like you to review that statement to yourself, please. Doctor.
Thank you.
All right. Since we're still here, I should read this to you, right? This says, go away, header. This is a message from the Chief Safety Officer of Johns Hopkins. I really can't get that header off there, so I can't see it. If you are reading this, I know that your child or loved one and you may be dealing with a challenging situation, but I want to take a moment to tell you about the extraordinary lengths we at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital take to ensure the safety and well-being of your child and every patient who comes through our doors. Quote, all we do, all for kids, end quote, is more than just a slogan. It is our blood as caregivers. Patient safety and quality of care are the prime directive for our hospital, driving everything we do. This mission is rooted in a spirit of teamwork that connects our entire staff, medical and non-medical. And it also includes all of you, the parents, guardians, and patients. You play a vital role, whether it is pointing out any inconsistencies you may see, asking us to clarify anything you don't understand, or suggesting how we can do better. You are our partners as we strive every minute of every day to deliver the best and safest care for your child. And that is signed Brigitte Mueller, MD, Vice President of Medical Affairs and Chief Safety Officer, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether, based on your review of the facts of this case, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital lived up to or complied with the statement by Dr. Mueller?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, foundation, lack of predicate in 403.
Sustained.
What, if anything, did you see in this organization to indicate that there was a defined chain of, that there was a defined leadership or lack thereof?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overrule that objection. You can answer that.
I forgot the
So
question.
it's the indications have been consistent that quality assurance and performance improvement was to be organized at a division level. And the divisions report up to departments. There appeared to be no system-wide approach to quality assurance and performance improvement.
What's the problem with that?
Well, for start,
Objection, Your Honor. It's vague. It's calling for a narrative answer. It's calling for a lecture. It's outside the pleadings. It's 403 violations as well.
Overrule. You can answer.
so first, it's an expectation that I was held to every time that I was at the facility or division and participating in a regulatory survey, that we could demonstrate a system-wide approach.
Why is that better?
Well,
Very good.
You can answer.
it sounds great to have everyone responsible for quality and patient safety, but we've all experienced it. When everybody is responsible, nobody ultimately is responsible. So without oversight by a leader like a VP of quality, a VP of medical affairs, a chief medical officer, somebody to make sure that there was a consistency, you had wide standards from one division to the next, and that creates gaps where patients can fall through the net. And this, my experience in reviewing the system that the leaders have addressed and touted, is that this was really a system-wide failure that allowed Maya and potentially others to fall through the gaps.
Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether the system that was set up by Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital in operation provided sufficient safeguards to protect children in Maya Kowalski's position?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation, relevance, 403, improper hypothetical.
Sustained.
What, if any, opinions have you formed about the ability of the system you just testified to protect children who are in a situation such as Maya Kowalski was during October of 2016 to January of 2017?
Same objection, Your Honor. We're saying the same question.
I agree. Sustained.
Net issue, one sec. In All right, I'm back. I don't know what happened. I froze up. I was on the Ethernet and now I just clicked over to Wi-Fi. So again, thank you, Fios. All right, I stopped it right when I saw it go off. So hopefully we're right where we were.
Photographed without authorization on 2 occasions, a child having what we discussed before with the not being allowed to see her priest, having things taken from her, these type of events from happening.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance 403, leading. It's also fails to take into account BCF and Chapter 39 involvement, and it's outside the plea.
Overall, you can answer that one.
So the quality assurance and performance improvement function would need to be overhauled so that it was system-wide. And that's actually something that Hopkins is recognized as a leader in. So the expertise should be readily available to the team at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital. But that would provide a consistency from division to division, and create a safety for patients as they're being handed off from one caregiver to the next.
Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience into a reasonable medical management probability as to whether the system in place provided sufficient safeguards for children at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital during the relevant period?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance outside the pleadings, improper foundation.
I don't think you tied it to my Kowalski, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Same question as to the care and treatment of Maya Kowalski.
Same objection, Judge. The question's compound as well.
I'm going to overrule that. You can answer it.
I do have an opinion.
What is that opinion?
I do believe that the system failed Maya Kowalski and her family during her stay, primarily because the architecture was so siloed that there was there were gaps in the safety net that let her care fall short.
Your witness.
You see here, gaps in the safety net.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Once again.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor,
That's good, Patroness Glow. Push the merch. We have Team Maya merch. All proceeds are going to be going to research CRPS. Thank you to my West Coast and Australian mods who are still hanging out with me. It's 12:49 a.m. here in New York, but I'm a night owl, so let's keep going.
Court, please, could I first approach the witness and ask to look at the materials he's reviewed?
Sure.
Your witness.
All right, he wants to look at all the materials, blah, blah, blah. It's gonna make us sit here. They're going to talk, chit chat. Here we go.
Hey, Dr. Corcoran, the jury has several questions.
Mr. Anderson, do you have any follow-ups?
About that memo.
Your witness.
I don't know about.
Practice that was
Those
a
were
long
your
time ago.
practice. But if you had served, now,
All right,
Your
guys.
witness.
Your Honor, if the court please, could I first? Okay.
Yes, Lita, that's why we're coming back to watch it now, because it is important, especially when we're going to play the other witnesses.
About this case, is that right? When we get through here was a complete list. And what I will like to ask the clerk to mark when we get through here was a complete list of everything you've reviewed about this case. Is that right?
It is a list of everything that was provided to me. Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was provided to you grouped in, grouped by issue. Is that correct?
By date and by issue.
Yes. So in other words, if they wanted you to look at issues relating to the surveillance video, they sent you documents regarding that, correct?
That is correct.
And if they wanted you to look at corporate documents, they sent you a group of documents related to that, right?
That's how they're grouped. Yes, sir.
Okay. And if they wanted you to look at examples of Dr. Smith directing care, they sent you a group of documents relating to that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then if they wanted to have you look at particular documents regarding the surveillance video, they sent you documents related to that, correct?
Yes, sir. That's one grouping.
Okay. So do you have any idea how many pages of policies and procedures and documents have been produced in this case?
Have been produced to me
No, sir. To
in general.
parties
I
that the hospital has produced,
I understand
the
that
plaintiffs have produced. Any idea?
I understand the number is in the tens of thousands.
We can agree, can't we, that you didn't get tens of thousands of documents?
No, sir.
You didn't come anywhere close.
And for the scope that I was evaluating, I didn't need the entire.
Well, so that we're clear, we covered this a little bit earlier, and I'm not going to go back into what I asked you before, except perhaps by accident. But you're board certified in osteopathic medicine, but you've never held yourself out as a pediatrician, correct?
I am board certified in obstetrics and gynecology. I have a
I see. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
No worries, sir.
You're an osteopathic physician.
I am an osteopathic
And
physician.
you're board certified in obstetrics.
Okay, a lot of digs here if somebody's not an MD and he's a DO. Did you hear that? You're an osteopathic physician, right? You're not an MD, a medical doctor, because there's some, some fallacy out there that, it's easier to get into osteopathic medicine medical school than it is to get into regular medical school. And so a DO is not as good as an MD. Watch out, Hunter. This might backfire on you.
Gynecology.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And you've never been trained as a pediatrician.
That is correct.
And you've never held yourself out as such.
That is correct.
And as far as your opinion in this case, it presupposes that the diagnosis of CRPS for this young lady was correct, doesn't it?
No, as I explained to you during my deposition, it presupposes that the proper approach should include an evaluation for CRPS.
I see. Okay. Did you ever look at any records of this young lady's care from Lurie Children's Hospital?
Not from the hospital, no.
Did you ever look at any from Tampa General Hospital?
No, I did not.
Did you ever review any complete medical record in this case?
Medical record? No.
Okay. And the depositions that you seem to have reviewed in this case, looking at your list, seem to be somewhat limited. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I think that's fair.
Okay. Well, you reviewed Sally Smith's and Ms. Beatty's and Dr. Elliott, Ms. Condon, Ms. Crane. That's about it, wasn't it?
No, sir. The Dr. Perno,
Okay, Dr. Perno,
Dr. Napolitano.
Napolitano,
There were others.
there are others.
He said
Did you ever review Dr. Michelle Smith's deposition?
I don't recall that name.
Okay, well, that's a good thing because she wasn't deposed.
Oh, did you see what he just did? He tried to catch him in a lie. Well, it's a good thing because she wasn't deposed. Wow, that was snakish. Hold on, let's hear that again.
There were others.
There are others. Did
Yes,
you
sir.
ever review Dr. Michelle Smith's deposition?
I don't recall that name.
Okay, well, that's a good thing because she wasn't deposed. Here's what I meant to ask. Did you ever review her progress notes from the PICU?
I did not.
So you have no idea what efforts were made to transfer this patient during the first week that she was at All Children's.
I didn't review the medical record references to transferring the patient.
Okay, so you don't have any idea what they contain.
I never reviewed the medical record, so I have no insight into what was in the medical record regarding the transfers.
Okay. Now,
Backfired, Ray. You're right. It made him look more. He made
let's
him
go
look more
back to
credible.
what you haven't looked at.
Right.
Did you ever look at Dr. Hanna's records? Ever see his records at all?
Not his records, no.
It doesn't matter. I submit to you, it doesn't matter. He's testifying about internal practices and procedure of hospital management and whether or not the hospital followed its own rules. Remember, there was no shelter order in place until at least October 13th or 14th. I forget now. We went back and read it in the complaint. She was admitted on the 7th. They made the call to the hotline. That complaint was closed and dismissed, and Sally Smith didn't like that. So she waited. They called Sally Smith in when there was no investigation pending. There wasn't even a valid complaint pending. They gave her illegal access to Maya's medical records so that she could start concocting her theory. And then they filed another complaint or called in another complaint on October 9th. These people under the Bill of Rights that we just saw were allowed to leave. They were allowed, they had the right to leave this hospital AMA, and they were told that if they tried to do that, security would intervene. So regardless of Chapter 39 and all this other nonsense and DCF involvement, there was no court order in place for at least the first week that Maya was in the hospital. And the fact that they violated their own internal procedures and policies and the standard of care is going to be a problem for them, in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
You never saw Dr. Kirkpatrick's records?
Not their treatment records.
Okay. And you've never seen any order in the chart regarding the EEG video or seizure monitoring, have you?
Again, I have not reviewed the medical record because that's not the area of expertise that I've been brought to assess.
Well, you've expressed some opinions regarding the EEG video. What I'm trying to find out is, have you looked at the chart to see what's in the chart about that video?
I don't think that reviewing the charts are necessary to inform the opinion that I shared a half hour ago.
Okay. But you did indicate in that opinion what you thought the chart should contain, right?
I was asked to review a memo. I shared my opinion or insight about that memo.
Were you ever provided any of the court orders regarding this patient?
I don't specifically recall seeing the court orders. I may have, but I don't recall it right now.
Going back to Ms. Beatty, did you ever see her personnel file?
No, sir.
Did you ever see any of the evaluations that she had, her annual evaluations?
Annual evaluations? No, sir.
Okay. So you have no knowledge of any of that?
Of her annual evaluations? No, sir.
Okay. And with Dr. Mueller, the VPMA, you know who she is?
I do.
Did you ever see her job description?
No, sir.
You did notice on all the charts here that there was no title called Chief Medical Officer in their lexicon.
And I pointed that out.
Okay. So you're kind of assuming where the Vice President of Medical Affairs fits in? You don't really know what her
I don't agree with that characterization at all.
well, you don't know what her job description is, do you?
The job description wouldn't be on the organizational chart anyway, but you are correct. I've never seen her job description.
Okay. So you know where the line is. That's
Well,
about all.
It wasn't represented, so I don't know where that line is, and that was
Okay.
my point.
You don't know where the line is, and you don't know where she fits in.
On that chart, you are correct.
Well, you looked at several charts, didn't you?
Well, I looked at organizational charts that were provided that apparently were from 2012, which had the position listed.
You talked about some about the consent. Council put up 3002-002. Had you ever seen that before?
Not before getting involved in this case, no.
Okay. Well, there was a question about the use of images, video in this case,
Mhm.
in the course of treatment, correct?
Correct.
Diagnosis is part of treatment, isn't it?
I would think so.
Okay. You'd agree with me about that, right?
Sure.
Okay. With reference to transferring this patient, were you ever aware of Ms. Kowalski denying that she wanted to take Maya out AMA. You ever made aware of that?
My understanding is that the objection that she had was based on the diagnosis of a psychiatric disorder.
I understand. So your understanding was she didn't want the child transferred because the child would carry a psychiatric diagnosis upon discharge. Is that right?
I think we heard that that they didn't want to accept that as a transferring diagnosis.
Did you ever see any indication that the hospital was asked to reconsider that part of the medical record?
Again, sir, I've not reviewed the medical record.
Okay. Well, my question wasn't really restricted to that. My question was, did you ever see any indication that this family heard, gee, you're going to discharge our daughter with this diagnosis. We want you to change the diagnosis. Did you ever see any documentation of that?
Where would that documentation be?
Could be any one of 1,000 places. I'm asking you whether you ever saw that suggested.
Only in testimony.
You heard it in testimony somewhere?
Gotcha.
I believe we heard that Monday morning.
We heard that someone asked to change the diagnosis.
No, we heard that the diagnosis was rejected.
I understand that.
Okay.
Listen to my question very carefully, please, because it's probably confusing, even to me.
Okay,
I'm
Hunter,
confused.
you can try and make him look like an idiot, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
My question is, did you ever see any indication, any documentation, any indication that this family asked that diagnosis for Maya's discharge that they didn't like, that it be changed?
Documentation? No.
And under the client's rights you talked about, they had the right to do that, didn't they?
I don't have the document in front of me, but if it's in your hand, I have no reason to question you, Mr. Hunter.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
I appreciate you having a chat with my wife.
Only if you'll do the same, sir.
Deal. Were you aware of any policy at all children's regarding images and recordings of patients in child abuse cases, child abuse situations?
Can you cite the policy for me?
I can. It's Defense Exhibit 3019-005. Did you ever see that?
Visible? Off the top of my head, I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure it's in evidence, so I'm going to pass along right now. That brings me to another set of questions. In your experience as a CMO in Florida, have you ever worked with DCF?
That never came across my desk.
Okay.
Sustained.
Very well. Did you you told us that you had no role in preparing any consent of the type we talked about earlier. Is that right?
I never wrote the consent. We left that to the lawyers.
Didn't I understand your testimony to be that the medical staff is independent of the hospital?
The American Medical Association was granted autonomy around the time of the adoption of Medicare. So yes, the medical staff is meant to be self-governing.
Okay. So the mere fact that someone holds a position in the medical staff doesn't necessarily reflect any position with the hospital per se. Is that right?
I disagree with that.
So you don't agree that the medical staff is independent of the hospital?
I don't agree that anyone with a position of authority, regardless of who they're aligned with, can't hold a position of influence with a hospital. A board member, a politician, a community leader.
Like yourself?
I'm neither. None of the above, sir.
Well, you were elected president of your medical staff.
I was and unable to serve, but
Okay.
that was when I was in practice. That was a
When
long
you were in
time ago.
practice. But if you had served,
Yes, sir.
that would not make you an employee of the hospital now, would it?
That's correct.
Let me ask you a couple of depositions just to be on the safe side here. You've never reviewed any of the Kowalski's depositions, have you?
I have not.
And you've never reviewed the depositions of Dr. Kreisman or Dr. Kilgore,
Kilgore, I have not.
Dr. Posey, Dr. Sanchez?
I don't believe it. Off the top of my head, I can't comment about those.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about Dr. Sanchez while I've got you on the subject here.
Okay.
You talked about, you referred to the text exchange between Dr. Vos and Dr. Pep Sanchez?
I believe that was brought up
Okay. Do you know who Dr. Pep Sanchez is?
from the PICU.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You know what date she saw this patient?
Not off the top of my head, sir.
Were you aware that she hadn't seen the patient for nearly 3 months at the time that Mrs. Kowalski committed suicide?
Well, she was a PICU physician, and Maya was in the PICU in the early days of October, and that unfortunate message was exchanged, yes, 3 months later in January of the following year.
think maybe she was referring to what she did 3 months before, not what the hospital did during the ensuing 3 months.
Can you read the text for me so I can
Well,
put it into
I've
context?
been objecting to that, so I'll tell you what, we'll let the jury hear that from her.
Okay.
But the point is, you never heard from her what her explanation was for what she meant in that text message, have you?
I've never spoken with her, no, sir.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Mr. Anderson, do you have any follow-ups?
Did counsel here show you a single document, deposition entry, or any other evidence that changed your opinions in any respect?
No, sir.
Nothing further.
Thank you.
Members of the jury?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Sure
it's
has
about
questions. Let's see.
See how many questions I get.
Yes, sir. I'm learning.
He's and Dr. Sally Smith still at, and I want to confirm that you've not been approached. Okay, Dr. Corcoran, the jury has several questions. First question, if you know, is Dr. Dees and Dr. Sally Smith still at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
I don't know for certain. I understand that Dr. Sally Smith has.
If you know or not.
I don't know.
Thank you. Okay, next question. If parents have ongoing concern regarding their child's daily care and treatment at the hospital and expressed it often to the staff, would the parents be advised as to the proper chain of command they should contact to voice their concerns?
That's a very reasonable expectation, and I believe that that's the way it should work. I can't say that the system in place in 2016 provided for that.
They had no one to complain to.
Were the Kowalskis told they could contact senior executives to voice their concerns via email or otherwise?
I don't know the answer to that.
If medical staff works independently of the hospital, then who holds them accountable?
That's a great question. And the Medical Executive Committee, which I was a member of for 4 years when I was in practice, is responsible for oversight of the physicians for quality assurance, performance improvement. And the Medical Executive Committee has a relationship with the board of the hospital so that everyone's on the same page. I hope that answers the question.
The next question, and for the author of this one, I'm only able to ask one. Have you assisted in a case with a Munchausen by proxy diagnosis in your career?
I have not. I practiced obstetrics and gynecology. I'm happy to say that that was not part of my experience.
Next question. What is the acute quote, the acuity of the bed, end quote? What does this mean?
That would be a better question for Mr. Hunter, but I believe that he was referring to how sick of a patient can you care for? Some hospitals, like Venice Hospital, when it was around, was a lower acuity. Sarasota Memorial Hospital takes care of sicker patients, so it has a higher acuity.
Mr. Anderson, that completes the jurors' questions. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Hunter, do you have any?
Okay, so that's it. That was Dr. Corcoran, who testified as an expert on behalf of the plaintiff all the way back on October 11th. Looks a little fuzzy right now because I had to go back onto the Wi-Fi. So hopefully you can see me and hear me. Okay. Do you guys want to keep going? You want to watch the testimony of Dr. Anderson from today, who is the defense expert, so we can compare and contrast. How long is this testimony too? All right, we're going to keep it on high speed though, because I don't know how long it is, but let's see what we can do here. See where we can get through. If everyone else is awake, I'll stay awake. So this is the comparable witness who's testifying as an expert on behalf of the defense. His name is Dr. Mark Anderson, no relation to the plaintiff's attorney. And here we go.
If it may please the court. Good morning, sir. If you could introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name is Mark Anderson.
Okay. The other Mr. Anderson. I wish the court reporter luck. So, yeah, no relation to the gentleman sitting behind me, correct?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
We got the hard part out of the way. All right. Can you tell the jury what do you do for work?
Right now, I'm semi-retired. I do some consulting for a medical device company.
Okay, so let's take you back. Was there a time where you served in executive leadership at a children's hospital?
Yes, from the year 1980 to 2000, I was employed by Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. While I was there, I had a variety of senior management roles when I first started there. This was after I had completed a master's degree in health and hospital administration. I first went there as a department director for the admissions and ambulatory services department. I served in that capacity for a couple of years, and then I moved into a role of vice president for clinical and support services for Children's of Wisconsin. That entailed the departments of laboratory, medical records, pharmacy, x-ray, material services, housekeeping, basically everything other than nursing reported to me at that point in time. In the year 1991, I became the executive vice president and chief operating officer of Children's of Wisconsin.
Okay, so I'm going to take you a little bit backwards now. Where did you achieve your undergraduate degree?
I went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa and received a commerce and business degree that was concentrated in healthcare management.
And what did you do after you graduated from the University of Alabama?
I worked full-time for a year or so at Children's Hospital of Alabama, which is located in Birmingham.
And what title did you have there?
While there, I was also the director of ambulatory services in the emergency department.
Did you obtain any graduate degrees at the University of Alabama, Birmingham?
In 1980, I received my master's of hospital and health administration from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. Subsequent to that, a number of years, in the year 2012, I returned and I received a doctorate in health administration from the University of Alabama, Birmingham.
And was it after that that you went to the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin?
It was after my master's degree.
And was there a time that you obtained any other degrees? I believe you obtained a degree in theology, is that right?
Right. Serving at Milwaukee, I had done a lot of volunteer work in various countries abroad, both volunteer work, but also medical missions work. And I got fascinated by some of the work that I was doing. So I returned and in 1997 received a degree, a Master's of Arts degree in theological studies from McCormick Seminary in Chicago, Illinois.
What years were you at Children's Hospital of Wisconsin?
From 1980 to 2000.
And what did you do after you left Children's Hospital of Wisconsin?
In the year 2000, I relocated to Virginia and I worked for a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization called Project Hope. Project Hope did overseas training for health professionals, and I was a management officer at Project Hope, overseeing the areas of Asia and the Middle East.
Was there a time that you started working for an organization, the Society for International Health?
The Center for International Health, from 2003 till 2010. The Center for International Health was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a consortium of academic and medical institutions. It did the same type of work Project Hope did. It did health training for health professionals overseas. I was the CEO of that organization.
And was there a time through your professional or volunteer work that you had the opportunity to go overseas and work with Mother Teresa?
Indeed, in 1991, I was doing medical mission work, and I spent time in Calcutta working for Mother Teresa's organization, the Sisters of Charity, in their home for the dying indigent patients.
And was there a time in your professional volunteer work that you had the opportunity to work with Bishop Desmond Tutu?
In the mid-90s through about 2015, I had multiple involvement.
He worked with Mother Teresa and Bishop Desmond Tutu, both.
With the Archbishop and some of the work that he was doing in South Africa relative to refugees and also providing medical supplies to his organization.
So going back to your education and training, did you achieve a doctorate in health administration?
I did in the year 2012 from University of Alabama, Birmingham.
And after you completed your work around the country and overseas, have you since returned, or did you since return to the Tampa Bay area and work in any capacity while here?
After working in the Center for International Health, after I received my doctorate degree, I stepped back into hospital administration in the United States, working first at Jacksonville, Florida for Shands Hospital, which is part of the University of Florida.
He's just giving his qualifications, Zoe. That's why it's relevant. It's like his CV.
And then 2 years after that, working for Tampa General Hospital in Tampa General for 4 years as the senior administrator for ambulatory services development.
Turning to this case, I retained you to look at the materials available to determine whether all children's hospital had appropriate organizational structures for patient safety. Is that true?
Correct.
And just to go over some of the records that I sent you, did you have a chance to review organizational charts?
Correct.
Did you have a chance to review depositions, including those of Dr. Mueller, Dr. Perno? Is that correct?
I did.
Did you have a chance to review Kathy Betty's testimony?
I did.
Did you have a chance to review the human resources file of Ms. Betty?
I did.
Did you have a chance to review medical records from all children's?
I did.
Did those include both during times of admission and attempts to transfer?
Yes, it did.
Did you have a chance to review policies and procedures from all children's
I
hospitals?
did.
Did you have the chance to either review or observe the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Joe Corcoran?
I did.
How much have you charged for your services to date, if you can approximate that?
I believe $5,600.
It's not a lot of money. Not a lot of money if you reviewed all those deposition transcripts and 1,500 pages of medical records and all this stuff. $5,600 is nothing.
So let's talk a little bit based on your training and experience and your review of the records today. How does a hospital like All Children's function tied into to its affiliation with academic medical center?
Children's hospitals basically or entities that perform as a safety net for pediatric care. Most children's hospitals in the United States are a part of.
Wait, he just said they're a safety net. Remember our last expert talked about how they fell through the net. Interesting that he's using the same term, safety net, when plaintiff's expert said they fell through the net. Dr. Corcoran said that.
Academic medical centers, which means they're complex entities because there are different objectives that academic medical centers have. They have an education mission, they have a research mission, but the primary mission is clinical care. And because of so many different missions, though, you have a complex organization where there are competing interests sometimes for resources, for activities, and all manner of funding and activities. But where the academic centers come together and integrate most effectively is in the area of clinical care. And that happens really at the bedside, because that's really where the primary mission exists: how to treat the patient, how to do what's best for them, how to relocate them out of the hospital back into home situations in the best manner that can be achieved. It's difficult. Children's hospitals are unique from other perspectives in the sense that.
Yeah, let me give you a question. What's unique about how a children's hospital would operate versus how an adult hospital would operate?
Children's hospitals are institutions that basically have the sole mission of trying to deal with the lives of children. And so they're geared towards comprehensively looking at the needs of children. Who have a history in children's hospitals like to say is that children really are not small adults. They have different needs and different requirements. They are not able, in some cases, to be able to tell you where they hurt or what their conditions are because of their age specific status. The medications that they might receive, smaller doses because of their size and weight and characteristics like that. The equipment that treats them is different, again, because of size and specifics. So there are a lot of issues associated with children's hospitals that make them unique and different in and of themselves.
The jury's heard the concept of silos in hospitals. Can you tell the jury how each individual silo from physician, nursing, social work, how they would be subject to a quality review process?
The silos refer a little to what I was referring to earlier in terms of the education mission, for example, or research or clinical care. And the way that organizations such as academic medical centers begin to look at quality, they develop quality plans. So they're departmental specific activities that are annualized, and each and every department will have a specific series of objectives to meet quality care goals that are established for the organization as a whole. Physician components from the medical staff will have their own degree of goals and objectives that they have. They attend grand rounds in academic centers where there are teaching components. They are in the continuing learning process as faculty members and students. Each of the separate departments within a hospital will have their own specific quality assurance plan defined for their specific entity. And that will translate all the way down into specific quality activities that will be embedded in each employee's annual review. So it's a process that has an annual quality assurance and improvement plan for the organization, stepping down to the specific entities that are part of that, whether it be medical staff or hospital staff, and then down to the specific departments, and then all the way down to the individual.
I don't know if it's just late or he's just super boring because he's really putting me to sleep. Is he going to pick it up soon?
So let's talk a little bit about the annual review process. In your review of the files that I've sent you, did you notice whether Kathy Beatty in social work was subject to annual reviews?
Yes, I reviewed a number of of her human resource reviews, yes.
And did you notice that she had been an employee of All Children since about 2009?
Correct.
And did you have a chance to review her performance reviews in 2015 and 2016?
I did.
And how does a performance review work at a hospital? Who's doing the review? If you could talk about that in the Care 360 model.
And each individual will be reviewed by their immediate supervisor.
I haven't seen it, but I was listening to it on my headphones today as I was walking around TJ Maxx, because you know you can always find 50 things you need there. So I had it on because I wanted to listen to it. That's when I got the idea to play his testimony after Corcoran's. So is it going to get better? Oh yeah, can we speed through direct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's go.
And
So
as part
is there
of
anything
an annual
that's like super
review,
important for us to
several
listen
things
to
happen.
during his direct?
One, you
Is
review
there
the
anything
past
important?
year's activities of that employee. So there's a review of what's happened. And then the second part of the review is really setting forth what are going to be the goals and objectives for that employee going forward. In Ms. Beatty's annual reviews.
Yeah, she told somebody she wanted to take it outside, right? This is the one where she got in a fight with a all right, good. If everyone says there's nothing in direct, let's just get through this because I mean, I don't mind being here all night, but if it's big nothing, if there's a whole lot of nothing here.
In the unit might be. That huddle, if you want to call it that, of employees, or a meeting of the combination of.
I don't think they put the chapters in this one yet today, but let me say, sometimes they have chapters, which makes it easier to, oh no, this is Tampa 13. I don't think they do chapters. Let me just. Did I write it down?
You got an outline from the defense,
Okay.
About
the very same outline you just tested.
Dr. Perno, deposition transcripts, fourth amended.
Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to ask a clarifying question of the witness before
I
I
disagree.
object to licensure in the state of Florida.
Mr. Shapiro, if the witness relied on documents, make it simple.
Just,
You got that, didn't you?
So I would be correct that the last time you actually were a CEO, it was 20 years ago in Wisconsin at a children's hospital there.
I was a senior administrative. I held the title Chief Operating Officer for Ambulatory Services at Tampa General. So that would have been 2018. For a children's hospital, 2000. You're correct.
So I was correct, 20 years ago in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
Did you actually review the Joint Commission reports that you testified to on direct examination?
There were comments in the material that.
Okay, I remember this, even though I was walking through TJ Maxx. He testified about these Joint Commission reports that he says he reviewed for his opinion. And now Anderson on cross is asking him if he actually did review these Joint Commission reports.
I was provided that referenced that, I believe.
All right, so you received an outline prepared by these guys that had some of the quotes from the reports in it. True?
True.
And that report, how many pages was it? I mean, not the report, I mean, the outline. How many pages was that outline?
I'm not following which outline you're talking about.
The very same outline you just testified contained comments from the Joint Commission reports.
Well, what I was referencing there is I received
Your Honor, how do we approach it?
thousands of pages of material before.
I understand that. I'm asking you whether there was anything prepared by the defense lawyers that summarized or provided you with the choice of materials you were going to testify to.
Yes.
How many pages was it?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 pages. A summary, I guess.
And in that outline, they pointed to you certain deposition excerpts,
No,
the standards you were to testify to?
I'm trying to be sure I'm specific about what outline you're talking about. I received a document of what portions of my testimony would be this morning that had outlines of topics that I had discussed with my attorney.
They're not your attorneys. They hired you for this case. The attorneys, they're not your attorneys.
Okay, so they told you,
No.
Oh, no.
What?
He said no. He made me approach on this. He said no.
okay,
Hold on, we got to play that back. But just for one thing, Ray says, how do you think the plaintiffs knew about this? Was it part of his expert designation? You'd think they'd try to hide it better. No, I think they probably either saw him looking at it in the hall or somebody saw him looking at it in the men's room. And that's how this came out. Not part of his expert designation, because he's going to testify that he just got this outline today or this morning.
so they told you,
No.
Did we approach
What?
this? No.
they told you what you'd be testifying to, right?
Overall, you can answer.
They told me topics for discussion as a prep.
And within those topics, they also gave you materials or excerpts from materials that you should use, did they not?
They gave me, if we're talking about the information this morning,
He's like, what? This morning?
I
What?
reviewed some documents relative to an HR performance eval.
I'll get to that in a moment. What I'm asking you, sir, if I'm understanding your testimony, you got an outline from the defense last night. Are we in agreement there?
It was not last night, it was this morning. And I received a document about discussions that we had about topics that were going to be brought to my attention to discuss this morning.
Okay, in that one, did they provide you with references for materials that would be useful in discussing that topic?
No,
Okay. Pickle Nits asked, would this be work product or can they have him turn it over? Yeah. Anything they gave their expert to review that he relied on to form his expert opinion is discoverable. So we're gonna just buckle up for this one. Might want to get some popcorn.
How? Other than telling you what you were going to be asked, topics you were going to be asked this morning, what else did they provide you in that outline?
a listing of materials that I had previously looked at. And then a documents relative to Ms. Beatty's performance evaluation.
Okay. So you yourself did not go out and seek any materials in this case, did you?
Materials I received were provided over time.
The defense provided you with the materials you were to base your opinion on, right?
Correct.
Did they provide you with the 2017 review of Kathy Beatty?
Yes,
They did. For the year encompassing the October incident, I'll get the date, sorry. The November 18th, 2016 incident involving Kathy Beatty. They gave you the review that encompassed that?
I think it encompassed that, yes. I don't have the document in front of me now to look at.
So now, did you actually get any of the JCal reports on Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
By JCal, are you referring to the Joint Commission?
The Joint Commission reports, yes.
I did not see their full report, no.
You saw excerpts of the report.
I saw comments and material I received referencing Joint Commission, yes.
So he didn't see, not only did he not see the reports, he didn't even see excerpts of the reports. He saw some comments and some, paraphrasing from the attorneys about the reports. Didn't he testify earlier that he did review the reports? This is a mess. This is a mess. Yeah, Nancy, I agree. I think 5,600 wasn't enough at all. Remember I said it's not a lot? Oh boy. Oh boy.
So you offered an opinion to the jury without actually reading the entire reports, right?
That's not good.
I gave an opinion based on what the findings of that report seemed to be, yes.
What the findings of that report seem to be, what the attorneys told me the findings of that report seemed to be. Oh boy.
What that report seemed to be was selected by the defense lawyers, was it not?
That was where the information came from.
You yourself never went out and actually researched to figure out for yourself what was relevant, what was not, as to any of this material, did you?
The information that I saw was provided by the attorney, but it had comments. It was medical record information and other types of information, depositions and the like. That's the material that I received.
It was set up.
So you more or less are serving here as a mouthpiece for what they consider important, right?
Overruled. You're a mouthpiece for what they
No, sir.
consider important.
So where the independent
Wait.
analysis come in here, if they selected the things. I'm sorry, I apologize. Continue, sir. My apologies.
He was done as far as I could
What
tell.
I
He did
made
not look like he
comment
was still
about
talking.
are progress notes and information that is documented within the records of all children's. And I've made comments about how transfer agreements were made. I made comments about interdisciplinary meetings that have occurred. I've made comments about perceptions of organizational structure and how quality of care is being rendered. And those are judgments that I have made based on my serving as a chief operating officer, looking at documented progress notes of patient care that was rendered to mine.
Okay. Now, in what you reviewed, I'm going to ask you some facts here that have been put before this jury, and I want to know in the materials you were provided. There's two questions here. First question is, were you provided them? And second, did you review to see whether this information ever made it up to senior management? Okay. First, so I understand the parameters. All right. First one is Kathy Beatty taking my client to a room, undressing her down to her sports bra and short shorts, and taking photographs of her without her parents' permission?
Objection to mischaracterization of the evidence.
Overruled, you can answer.
First, were you provided that?
That information was detailed or was told in documents that I received. Yes.
All right, as to that one. And then, second question. Well, maybe there's three. Would you agree that that's a type of situation that should be reported high enough up in an organization so somebody can review it and decide whether action needs to be taken?
The situation you are describing was the patient being taken to have in pursuit of further information about a diagnosis. And that diagnosis was to be, what was to be, that was being examined was there potential abuse going on to that patient? Pursuant to the hospital's policies and procedures, that was what was conducted by the team that took the photographs. But there was also no indication in the medical records or the progress notes that there was a parental complaint about that raised.
How are the parents supposed to complain if they don't know about it?
Exactly. Exactly.
The policy that is,
It's all right. Just tell me now, would you agree that that's the type of information that should go far enough up the chain so that someone can decide whether this was action that needed to be corrected?
the activity that was being done was in process of the care that was needed. It was not an abnormal event that was occurring or asking to be occurred.
Occurring
So
or
I just want to
asking to
know,
be
is
occurred.
this an event that should be carried up high enough or not? Yes or no?
It was carried to the risk management department and it was reported.
Okay. And in your view of this risk management, Stryker, have you ever seen the flow chart there, the organizational chart of this hospital?
Yes,
And you recognize the risk management reports directly to the general counsel?
that's where it is on the
And the
chart.
general counsel reports to the CEO, directly to the CEO?
Correct.
Who was the CEO back then?
Jonathan Ellen.
All right. So he would have
I
a
know that
direct
answer.
conduit of information from risk management, true?
Yes. those
Do
are
you
correct.
agree with the push-pull method that it's the duty of executives to not only just receive information from those that they're working with, but pull information from time to time to be fully informed?
I believe that meetings and communication should occur.
All right. So a good executive should be pulling information out as well as just passively receiving information. True?
That's correct.
Okay.
As they receive the information doesn't necessarily mean they're going to intervene in the situation.
Right.
If the situation was being conducted appropriate to the level of care required and appropriate to the policies and procedures of the hospital.
Okay. Conducting unauthorized surveillance in a room where my client could not escape for 48 hours without her knowledge or her parents' knowledge. First, is that the type of event that should be reported up the line if in fact there was no authorization?
Objection, mischaracterization, chapter 39. which needs to be raised.
By the operation.
There goes the sound machine. I love that we have recovery addicts Moz in here. That's amazing. You guys are like pulling a marathon tonight. I thought you were doing the
I
main
did not
thing
see
live.
any.
Discovered should be reported up the line. Putting my, if that becomes a, okay. Now, what about
Okay, it's like
a social worker putting my client on her lap and kissing her without the parent's knowledge or authorization?
Objection.
If that becomes known, should that be something that's reported up the line?
Objection, mischaracterization.
Overruled, you can answer that.
overruled.
Would you repeat it, please?
Sure. Putting my
Read it
client, a social worker, putting my client on her lap and kissing her. Is that the type of thing, if discovered, should be reported up the line?
I'm not aware that that specific event actually occurred as you described it.
We have our jury here to decide that, but go ahead.
I answered it. I'm not sure that that event just occurred as you described it.
Okay, let's just assume for the purposes of this question, since you're up here as an expert, that that happened. Is that the kind of thing that should be reported up the line?
If that was raised as a complaint by the family, yes. I do not believe that was raised as a complaint by the family.
Because the family didn't know
Again,
about
sir,
it.
How are the Kowalskis to know this is happening to their daughter if no one tells them?
Oh, he's
Again,
flabbergasted.
sir, the information you're bringing forth is not one that I've seen documented that actually occurred.
Because they never
Okay.
told you.
Let's look at then did you, in your review, note that Dr. Katzenstein was notified of concerns of Miss Beatty about her behavior?
I did not see any of that in the record in my review.
That was not provided to you.
I did
Oh.
not see it in a review that I did.
Oh,
Did you receive
oh no, he
the All
didn't.
Children's Hospital?
Oh no, he didn't. That wasn't even provided for to him. They didn't even tell him about it. They thought maybe he'd chicken out if he knew. He wouldn't testify. He's all Mother Teresa and Bishop Desmond Tutu in the beginning of his CV, but now he's like, what? I didn't know about this. He's shocked. He's as shocked as we are. But I do think his face is getting redder. Somebody said that he needs nitroglycerin. I'm getting a little bit worried. Also kind of feeling bad for him right now.
Did you see the All Children's Hospital corrective action notice on Miss Beatty?
No.
Okay.
In the record, I saw that it was referenced as an oral warning to her, and I did not see any written notice of that in the record.
Okay. Well, then let's bring up trial exhibit 2278-036. I'm aware of the time, Your Honor.
Oh, he's mad.
And let the record reflect that this is the counseling date of November 18th, 2016, All Children's Health Notice Corrective Action. Have you ever seen this document?
Wasn't in my 3-page summary.
Sir, I do not recall having seen this document.
Would it matter to you, sir, in your evaluation, if you look down under previous counseling corrective action, that Ms. Beatty here had been counseled 2 previous occasions on her professional behavior? Would that have affected your opinion?
Can I ask the witness if you showed both pages of the document and not just excerpts?
Sure. If you need to see the second page, I'm getting to it, but
Pulling out excerpts and asking if you see them, I can see the documents.
Mr. Anderson can conduct it the way he wishes to at this time. If the witness wants to see both pages, then
absolutely, Your Honor.
we can do that.
And I'll get to it. But for right now, would it affect your opinion that on 2 prior occasions, Kathy Beatty had been counseled regarding professional behavior issues?
That reflects that she has been counseled. I don't know what the outcome of the counseling was. I don't know what it was for. The fact that someone brings something to her attention in a corrective way is the proper process. In the human resource records that I saw, I did not see reference to this activity.
Right. Nobody
Let's
gave it
go
to
up to
him.
the specific misconduct.
Mr. Anderson, I've got to be in a meeting in 6 minutes. So
I
just
should
let
be-
you know.
I shall be done in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Does that give you enough?
Go for it.
All right, just a couple questions. Let's go up real quick under specific, state no specific misconduct. You see that there?
Yes.
And you see that the problem complaint of the specific conduct was Miss Beatty saying, do you want to take this outside? You see that?
Yes.
Would that indicate to you that Miss Beatty here, at least from what you're reading, is challenging a fellow worker to a fight?
Mm-hmm. I never saw this before. I have no
It's a
idea.
statement that she was aggressive.
Well, usually when people say, you want to take this outside, it means they're challenging him to a fight, is it not?
And I think this is what is being referred to as when she was issued an oral warning for that activity.
Final question, sir. Is this the kind of person that should really be put on as the primary contact and controller of a 10-year-old little girl in my Kowalski situation?
Objection, argument.
Oh, you can answer.
Good.
Based on Ms. Beatty's record, based on the evaluations that she had seen, based on the information that she was provided by her supervisors, she was assigned to this patient, and I don't see anything that would have prohibited that being done.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Okay, members of the jury, this is one of those days that I actually have a meeting that I have to appear at. So we're going to take lunch. I'm going to ask that they be back at 1:30, ready to go. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do the investigation and receive no information.
Okay, so they're going to go to lunch. There's a little bit left here. What do you think so far? I know, Jeanette, I kind of feel bad for this guy too. I do. I just feel like he's might pitch a heart attack here. Southern Mom, thank you so much for your $4.99 super chat. Do you think he's nervous due to lack of prep, or what is likely the root of his apparent discomfort? Did the defense feed him his opinion? I think they just did not. He feels unprepared because he did not get all the documents. And now he's thinking maybe he was set up. It's hard to say. It's hard to say without knowing more, but I think this case has a lot more to it than he's comfortable with. And he's now being shown things that he never saw and did not know were a part of the case. Hi, Lynn. Thanks for the super chat. Could this result in sanctions to the attorneys? We'll see. I think the judge is giving them more time to turn the stuff over. I think they have to turn some of the stuff over by 6 p.m. tonight. It could be sanctionable, but we'll see how germane it is to the case. AKA the Cat Lady, thanks for being the kindest sub on all of YouTube. Yay! Thank you so much for your $5 super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you. I think this is a really nice place, and I think you're also really nice. And Robbie, thank you for the super sticker as well and for hanging in there. The mods are on shifts tonight, you guys, because I think all my New Yorkers went to sleep except for Scott, who said he took a nap, and now he's probably going to be awake for 4 hours. Thanks, Ethan, for becoming a new member. Welcome. And to East Twig, thank you also for becoming a member. All right, let's get back to finish this up. There's not too much left, so let's see what more could possibly happen to poor Dr. Anderson. But before we do that, since we're here, let's take a look again at the Team Maya merch. All proceeds are going to go to CRPS research. If I can just pull that tab back up. Here we go. So we have some cute merch up on the store. I think the link is somewhere in the chat. It's also below on the channel description. All these cute little Team Maya shirts come in all different colors and all different sizes. And I didn't jack the prices up. So whatever proceeds I receive from the sale of this merch is going to go straight to CRPS research. So to consider it, if you guys, I know that so many of you are so involved in this cause and you feel as strongly about this cause as I do. And hopefully this is going to shine a light on a lot of things, the DCF privatized system, the fact that your parental rights can be taken away within a week and you can be stripped of your parental rights, and they can go to something like a hospital for false allegations of Munchausen by proxy. And it's also shining a light on jury duty. Somebody put in the chat that they got called for jury duty. I forget. Did I star that? And they were so excited. And I said, oh, here, Marcy Jewell, I'm so excited I have jury duty Friday morning, and I'm hoping to get picked. Am I crazy? No, I've been talking about this a lot. Jury duty is amazing. This is also, people are watching trials now and they're seeing how important jury duty is. And everybody should want to be on a jury. It's a great civic duty, and it's a really, really important job. And hopefully that's shining a light on this as well. All right, let's get back to poor Dr. Anderson and see if he makes it through the end of his testimony. You guys saw it already, so you can let me know.
Mr. Anderson, just to clarify the sequence of events, last night you and I met, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. You gave me your opinions.
Correct.
And then I discussed with you what topics I'd like to cover in front of this jury. Is that right?
Correct.
I gave you an outline of the topics that I wanted to cover. Is that right?
Correct.
I didn't tell you what the answers needed to be, did I?
No.
Okay. The answers that you're giving to the jury today are your own.
Correct.
Objection. Pleading
So staying on this issue.
Okay. Where, the answers that you gave to the jury, where did they come from?
They were from my own experience and my own observations of the data that I read.
And I know that at this point in the trial, you're one of several experts that the jury has heard from. But in your experience serving as an expert, is there anything unusual about meeting with the attorney the night before?
No.
He's right about that. They can prep their experts the night before. That's okay. But I think there's been a little mischaracterization of what he actually reviewed. And there's some things that the defense did not tell him about this case that he seemed very surprised by.
You were asked about a performance review of Miss Betty. May I approach the witness with the document?
Show it to
You can try and rehabilitate him, Shapiro. I don't know if it's going to work.
Attorney Mr. Anderson, I should say.
If I may approach.
Yes.
And take a moment to read both pages if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Anderson. That you had discussed with me earlier about you being aware of one verbal write-up.
Correct.
Okay, so I had provided that to you before testifying.
Correct.
With me. Is this the 2-page document, the full document that you had discussed with me earlier about you being aware of one verbal write-up?
Correct.
Okay, so I had provided that to you before testifying.
Correct.
Let me ask you this. In reviewing the document, does that show any impropriety with another patient, or was it employee to employee?
It was employee to employee.
You were asked about any notification from the family about Miss Betty's conduct. Do you remember that?
Betty. Yeah, you're right. I don't
Mr.
want to
Anderson
do
had asked you if the hospital ever received notification about the family complaining about something Miss Betty had done. Do you remember getting that question?
Not in the way you're.
There's no, in your review of the record, was there any notification from the family complaining about Miss Betty
No.
regarding any improper touching or stroking or
No.
anything? Okay. And finally, regarding, just briefly on the joint commissions, the accreditation body for hospitals, in your experience as a hospital executive officer, is that a requirement for hospitals to participate in federal funding programs?
The Joint Commission is a volunteer activity. If they choose to go through it and are accredited, then they are enabled to bill for federal funding.
And from your review of the materials you have, either publicly available or otherwise, did it appear that all children's participated in that program?
Yes.
I appreciate your time.
Mr. Members of the jury.
Oh, yeah. How much time you got?
Or patient's parents' complaints. Please.
Here's the jury questions, you guys. We're almost
No
there.
media. Witness Anderson, or witness Mr. Anderson. Let me ask the jury my questions. I want to confirm while you're waiting, not discuss this case amongst yourselves, did no investigation and receive no information. Is that correct? No media? No contact? Okay. And witness Mr. Anderson was outside the presence when I went over these questions with the attorneys, so this will be the first time he's hearing them. Mr. Anderson, if the hospital had all of the proper protocols in place and periodic department reviews, would a patient or patient's parents' complaints about a specific employee be documented and reviewed by supervisors, especially if the complaints were multiple?
Yes. When the parents make a complaint, it would go through whoever they complain to. If they're complaining to a physician, go through that process with an employee the same. But it would be looked at and followed up through HR and with the employee.
What?
If there was an official complaint.
Are only performances observed by other staff and peers of an employee documented for review? I think this question follows that last question.
Yeah.
When behavior is looked at as well as complaints or anything that might come to an attention, but a review that is conducted is really the observations of the supervisor, any external comments or from other departments, and then the 360 review, where there is commentary from the peers of the employee.
Anybody
Did you
understanding
see
what
a
he's
letter
saying?
from Beata Kowalski about action of some of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital's employees in the care of Maya Kowalski?
Of
Do you want me to read it again?
Oh, boy.
patients other than Maya?
Let me read it again. Did you see a letter from Beata Kowalski about action of some of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital employees in the care of Maya Kowalski?
I do not recollect that, no.
Why would they give him
Do
that?
you know the name of the supervisor that did the review of Miss Beatty? And does she still work at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
I believe the name of the supervisor who did the review is Chris Drisdall. I'm sorry, get it out. I have no idea if the individual is still at the hospital or not.
Do you believe the 2-day surveillance was done with the right intent, given the statement made between doctors Dees and Smith that, quote, a 10-year-old can't keep up the charade 24/7, end quote?
I would set aside the comment and answer that I think there was an exploration of a diagnosis that was still being explored, that of is there abuse, so that there was justification for the order.
How many disciplinary meetings were there and what were they about?
I don't
He has no
I don't
idea.
understand that.
I'm assuming the context is Kathy
Kathy
Beatty.
Beatty?
Yes.
I think from the documentation that I see now is, I think there are two. Is what's referenced.
Did you say the pictures taken were to look for child abuse?
I think that was part of it. I think there is in John Hopkins, if there was an examination to look for abuse, then that was part of the reason for the photographs. But I also think that it's my understanding that if an individual is to make a court appearance or to leave the hospital, there are photographs taken at that time as well.
He read some policies.
The photos were taken in January, which is 3 months after Maya was checked into the hospital. You're aware of that?
Not the specific date.
I don't know if that
Why
if the
did you
judge.
not review the Joint Commission?
I don't know if the judge threw that in there that said, the photos weren't taken until January. I didn't know if you knew. It kind of sounded like the judge was tossing that in. It doesn't sound like it was a jury question. So that was kind of interesting.
Reports.
The Joint Commission entirety of the report or reports is what I was making my comments about was that the hospital had been surveyed and had been accredited. And I wasn't referencing having seen the report. I was acknowledging that they had gone through the process of evaluation by the surveyors and that they had received accreditation and corporate performance and review.
This is a little bit lengthier question. I am a bit confused as to the reason for the photos you stated. By past witness testimony, I thought the reason for photos when Maya was in her skivvies was before court, and past testimony said another set was taken upon return from Maya's court appearance in order to document any, quote, new, end quote, body marks while not in the hospital's direct care. In your testimony, you said the Maya disrobe for photos was for, quote, diagnostics, end quote. The, quote, provided documents, end quote, you were provided and reviewed something photos taken this state of Maya to be used for diagnosis or for comparison? Or do you recall what you read that made you testify the photos were, quote, for diagnostics, end quote?
Okay, first of all, I love the use of the word skivvies, but second of all, I think we lost him after the 5th word or 6th word. Like he has no idea what that question was.
What I was referencing that I had seen in the documentation was the request for photos by Dr. Smith and Dees. And that was to assist in the pursuit of the diagnosis of whether or not that was contributed to a diagnosis of child abuse. That was the referencing that I was making.
How could it be reference to child abuse if she's already been in the hospital for 80 days or 87 days before they took the pictures? He has no idea what is happening. And I feel really bad right now.
Mr. Shapiro, do you have further questions?
Oh, please. Let him, just
Mr.
everybody let
Anderson.
him go.
Attorney, Mr. Anderson.
So you agree that senior hospital management were kept informed regarding Maya's care and treatment between December 2016 and January 2017, right?
Could you repeat that again, please?
You agree that senior hospital management then knew about Maya Kowalski's care during her stay there?
I don't know specifically which senior leaders knew of her stay there. What I was saying in my testimony was that it's very common that there are multiple shelter orders in place and that senior leadership would not necessarily intervene on those cases as long as the care of the patient was proceeding and was not rising to a level of crisis. Patient was stable. That was my reference in terms of indicating why or why not certain individuals might know of Maya's condition in the hospital.
So is your answer yes, you just can't tell us which senior official?
Well, Mr. Anderson, I can't tell you which senior officials knew.
Because they didn't give me any of that information. And we heard from Dr. Napolitano, who was on the risk management committee, who told us that he didn't learn about the Maya Kowalski case until April of 2023 when he read about it in USA Today.
I
don't
understand.
know.
We're speaking the same language. I'm saying, are we in agreement that in your opinion, senior management knew, you just can't tell us which one of the senior management? Are we in agreement about that?
I believe that there were senior managers who did know, but I don't know who they were.
Thank you.
That's it. Sit down. You've got enough. You just sit down. You're burning time now. You're losing. The shot clock is losing. That's it. You're good. That's enough.
You've never seen any indication of any review of Ms. Beatty's conduct outside of the corrective action I showed you, right?
Not from Ms. Beatty.
Right. So all of the actions I was talking to you about. In other words, the photography, the sitting on the lap, all those, you never saw anywhere in the records any corrective action as to Ms. Beatty, did you?
No, because I saw no official complaint lodged about any of those activities.
That's not my question. My question was, did you see in your review any indication that anyone at Johns Hopkins took any action regarding
No, I did not.
it? And as to the photos themselves, 48 hours as well, if they were going to be for diagnostic purposes, you would expect to see some medical analysis of them, would you not?
There should have been a review, yes.
And they should have appeared in the medical records, one would think.
That would be the logical place to see them.
Thank you.
Mr.
Is it
Shapiro.
over? The pain over?
To be clear, Mr. Anderson, having reviewed the sworn testimony of Ms. Beatty that we did provide you, she denies the allegations against her, does she not?
Yes, she does.
Then in terms of your review of what was provided to certain levels of leadership, is what I understand your testimony to be that there were members of risk management that were consulted about certain legal obligations?
That's correct.
Do you know whether those people in risk management were at senior leadership or executive levels versus lower level risk managers?
I do not.
Action leading.
Do you know, as you sit here today, what the level of executive leadership was that were consulted on those questions?
No, sir, not all of it. No.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Can we put up trial exhibit 2277-6?
Just stop. There's always that lawyer that needs to ask one more question, that keeps going with one more question. You've already, this guy has been decimated. You can't decimate him any further. He can't be obliterated into more pieces. Just let it go. They get it. The jury is smart. We know how smart they are. We don't have to beat it the dead
Is it
horse.
in evidence?
Yes. In evidence.
You may.
I know, Patronus Glow. I feel bad for him. It's that the empathy in us. It's like, oh, let this guy go.
While we're waiting, do you know who Jackie Crane is?
I've seen the name on the organizational chart of John Hopkins and knew she was the senior counsel.
Does this exhibit show a copy to Jackie Crane?
Yes, it does.
And at the bottom there, not the next to bottom after a lot of the whiteout, does it advise a doctor to get pictures of the scratches?
Yes, it does.
Right. And when you explained before on that flow chart, that organizational chart, Jackie Crane was directly linked to the president, correct?
She has a reporting relationship to the president.
Nothing further.
No further redirect. Thank you.
And members of the jury, do
Please,
any of
jury.
you have, it looks like we have further questions.
Oh, more. There's more. Somebody said that Recovery Addict can listen in on the questions because he has the Zoom feed, so he can hear what they're saying and he repeats it. And yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Jury's question.
But we're trying to look at it from the point
Doctor,
of view of the
this-
jury, so I'm not letting anybody have any secret information.
Doctor, this is actually my question, not
Oh
the
boy.
jury's question, but in your testimony a few moments ago, did you say exploration of a diagnosis or expiration of a diagnosis?
Exploration.
Exploration, okay. At this point, I'm not going to ask that question. Next question. Do you think Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital needs to change their policies for patient and safety care?
You got to say yes on this one.
From the records that I saw, from the chart that I saw and the way that they have organized the hospital, their framework for managing safety issues, patient care issues is there. From what I saw in the record, there is internal communication going on daily on a real-time basis relative to patients' care. So I believe that Johns Hopkins does have appropriate models for the safety of their patients.
Yeah, except the real-time communication is by text message, calling Maya things like K-girl and hey, we're going to catch her faking it. That's the real-time communication. So I guess he didn't watch Dr. Napolitano's testimony.
Mr. Shapiro, anything follow up?
No. Everyone stop.
Mr. Anderson, anything further?
Have you seen the testimony of Drs. Perno and Napolitano?
Oh, he took my question. That's cool.
About the lack of such day-to-day review?
Objection, mischaracterization.
Overruled, you can answer.
There are structures that exist that departmentally.
Okay, they have the framework. They just didn't put it. They just don't practice it. That's the answer. Just be honest. You're going to score more points with the jury if, you say things like, sometimes people fall through the net.
Safety items are involved. What they were referencing was their particular involvement in some of those activities. But there are, through the different medical staff committees and through the department structures, there are avenues for quality care to be done and to be monitored.
I just asked you whether or not you were aware that both of them testified about that.
Same objection, mischaracterization.
They both testified about that to my knowledge.
Nothing for you.
Nothing further.
Okay, is that the end?
Okay.
Okay, I just got to turn that off because it's just giving me agita. That was a lot. That was a lot, you guys. It was hard. It was hard to first of all, it's hard for me to not talk for so long and let videos like that play because that I have opinions and that I want to share them. And I'm like a mess over here. It's 2:00 in the morning. I think we all need to get some sleep. But I think that was damaging for the defense, to say the least. Let me know what you think. I know that I've been a little bit on the plaintiff side for most of this case because of all of the issues here and the parental rights being stripped. And I'm a mother of 5, and this case frightens me, and it should frighten you too. Trust me when I say it should frighten you, because somebody asked this question. Let me see where this is. Yeah, Swifty Sue. CPS in Florida hires contractors. Yes, there are 6 counties in Florida, Pinellas County being one of them, where DCF is privatized. Therefore, they don't make money unless they take your kids away. See how that works? That redhead, by contacting Sally Smith before the DCF hotline, she decides whether it warrants an investigation. Smith's agency is a private contractor who doesn't get paid if DCF doesn't need them. That's right. It's beyond unethical. I agree with you 100%. And the jury's putting it together. They need as well. They know that as well. Arizona off-grid. Have you figured out how to do? No, I don't know how to do polls yet. Do you? Can you tell me? I don't know. I don't know if I have to do it from YouTube. I stream from StreamYard. I need people for that. I need people for that. And my mods are working overtime today. We have shifts. So thank you to my mods. I could not do this without you. You're amazing. You guys are amazing. And you kept the chat classy. I don't think we had anybody bullying anybody. I don't think we had any trolls in here tonight. So I guess either they know how to stay away or you've blocked and deleted them early. Still have nightmares from jury duty. Oh, here, jury duty. There's an Amazon Prime show called Jury Duty. Has anybody watched it? It is hilarious. Hilarious. I'm going to recommend it to all of you because we've been talking about jury duty for a long time. Jury Duty on Amazon. It's like a reality show. A guy gets called in for jury duty. He thinks he's on jury duty. He thinks they're doing a documentary about jury duty, but everybody else in the courthouse, all the lawyers, all the rest of the jurors, everyone, the judge, even the people walking around the courthouse are all actors, and he doesn't know it. And it's kind of like a candid camera show, but it's heartwarming and hilarious. Highly recommend. Go watch it. Yep, it is amazing. It is amazing. Watch it. Jury Duty on Amazon for when you need to get away from YouTube and all the true crime and the harsh stuff that we cover all day long that is so traumatizing for us. Check it out. Who just woke up, sweet one? All right, here's all my fellow deadheads in the chat. See my poster up there? Woo! This is from the 50th anniversary Dead and Company tour. That's the forum. Those were at the forum. I went out to the forum. I've been following the Grateful Dead have been following me around since like I was 13 years old. So I saw Jerry Garcia with the Grateful Dead like a couple of hundred times. I stopped counting. And how do people even know like how many shows they saw? I don't know, but it's been a lot. I have one daughter named Scarlett and one daughter named Cassidy out of 5 kids. So 2 of them got Grateful Dead names. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Everybody hug your babies. Thank you, Angie Brown. Hug your babies tonight. Please, on your way out, hit the like button. We had not a lot of people here, not a ton of people, but we had like in the 600s here all night, which is very good for this time of night and for this stream when so many other people have been covering it. Sco Buffs. Yep. Oh, I went to Denver. I went to Boulder undergrad and I went to law school at DU. I didn't want to leave Boulder, so I stayed out there. But yeah, hopefully Coach Prime is going to turn this team around a little bit. And they're going to win some games. So that's what I'm hoping for. And hockey season has started. So that's also very exciting. Let's go Rangers. All right. Oh, I see, Steph, because I saw you pointed that out. So you're another deadhead. I saw that in there. So we have at least 4 of us. Oh, you went to undergrad at DU. Awesome. Oh, Robbie, thank you so much for coming in. I think this was your first full-time night as a mod and you did an amazing job. Okay, Sally Smith is testifying today. Does anybody know what time, in the morning or in the afternoon? Or do you think this is going to be a bait and switch and they're pretending they're going to call her in and they're not really going to call her in? What do you think? All right, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you will get notified and you will not miss a thing. And I bid you good night. Stay classy. Peace, love, and happiness. I'll see you guys real soon. Good night.